Chapter 160. The sun rose in the east. Dosen, who was chained, had been pulling the chain back and forth, waiting for List to take it for a walk. At the dining table in the castle, List was reading Glanny Truth's book collection while enjoying breakfast. Breakfast was as sumptuous as ever, but he focused on tasting the milk. He didn't know if it was a psychological effect or if he really tasted it, but the originally tasty milk now tasted of extraordinary quality. As expected of a dragon-type cow. "Mr. Carter, let someone inform Consultant Gort to come to the castle at 9 o'clock. "Yes, master." "By the way, tell Mrs. Morrison that from now on, I will drink 2 glasses of milk every morning and 2 cups of milk tea at night." "As you wish." After drinking the milk in one gulp, Carter took the cup and went to find Mrs. Morrison to make a new cup. List closed the 16 Tips to Improve Fireball book, leaned back in the chair and planned his thoughts. Enter the elite sequence. It was difficult to improve his battle energy by eating meat and drinking milk. At this time he needed the help of magic potions to expand the body's ability to produce battle energy, so as to continuously increase his total battle energy. Until the body reached the critical point of the total battle energy storage, he would kick the door open, and the energy change would cause a qualitative change, thus breaking through. "From today onwards I will be a medicine pot." List didn't know how the Sky Knight broke through to become a Dragon Knight, but he knew very well how the Earth Knight broke through to become a Sky Knight. His father was a Sky Knight, and his experience of breaking through was naturally passed on to his sons and daughters without reservation. Simply put, it was potions. The black tulip from the first 3 years has to be handed over to Levis to deal with. It's not easy to get. But the flame mushroom, I can keep it and enjoy it. The flame mushroom has fire magic and is an excellent magic material for making fire battle energy. He thought of Glanny. Glanny is proficient in fire magic. I can ask him to make magic potions. Magic potions referred to plant magic potions. It also referred to finished magic potions. Most plant magic potions had chaotic attributes and had auxiliary effects on various attributes of battle energy. A few plant magic potions, such as the flame mushroom, had obvious attributes and could be made into targeted magic potions. The improvement effect was better than the chaotic magic potion. One was general and the other was specialized. The value was not easy to compare. But for List, the magic potion made by the flame mushroom was the most suitable. Otherwise, a simple magic potion that did not obey the power of the nobles would have been crushed by the knight. Otherwise, pure mages who refused to obey the nobles' authority would have long been crushed by knights. In this world, be it in terms of quantity or strength, knights had the absolute advantage. Magic shooters were known to be on the same level as dragon knights. They stood at the pinnacle of power and could fight a dragon one-on-one, but they were definitely not a match for a dragon knight. The cooperation between the dragon and the knight was not as simple as 1 + 1, but a qualitative leap. That was why the knight was the mainstream and the magician was the non-mainstream. As his thoughts drifted away, List promptly pulled himself back and continued to ponder. Although Glanny is a bit stubborn and has a relatively low IQ, but he is still in the category of a normal person. Perhaps I can strive for him to settle down in the Flower Town. He likes Coral City. It should be because there are brothels in Coral City. I can find him a wife. Sorcerers were all single. In order to pursue the truth, they gave up the restraints of the secular world. However, mages were also human beings. Solving problems with their own hands was far less attractive than discussing problems with each other. No matter what, I still have to earn money. Only by earning money can I buy more magic potions. He was a little regretful that he had given Levis his share of the black tulip for the first 3 years. At that time he felt that it would take at least 3 years before he could reach the bottleneck of chi. Otherwise, if he could produce and sell the potions himself, he would be able to save another sum of money. There were too many ways to spend money. When this batch of World of Warcraft meat was finished, he would have to buy World of Warcraft meat from outside if he wanted to maintain his cultivation speed. This would be a huge expense. The cost of magic potions and World of Warcraft meat would be difficult for the lord of an ordinary town to support. List, who had a seafood business, could not guarantee that he could support it. There was no way to save money. He could only think more about how to generate income. Workshops had to be built in large numbers and strive to build Flower Town into an agricultural processing center. Black Horse Island also had to be conquered as soon as possible. The sale of Black Dragon Horse could definitely be exchanged for a lot of gold coins. At the same time, he had to speed up the construction of the Knight Squad. Without a knight to guard the territory, it was not a healthy state. Fortunately, there are dragon cows which provide me with rich nutrition and relieve the food pressure. A few cups of dragon cow's milk every day could at least match the nutritional intake of World of Warcraft meat. Of course, the premise was that there were really dragon cows. After walking the dog, Gord had already arrived at the castle. There was no doubt that he had received the task of rectifying the dairy farm assigned by List. He was already accustomed to List's irregular actions from time to time. As you wish, the dairy farm's cows will enjoy the same treatment as your black dragon. List sent Gord away. List rode straight to the wheat settlement with his retainers. He wanted to inspect the progress of Glanny and Brad's work and urge them to complete the task as soon as possible. The 12-retainer knight whistled behind him with an imposing manner. After the logging team flattened the Thorns Ridge, Marcus and the retainer knight's task was over. The retainer knight returned to List's side to guard the Lord. As for Marcus, he also had a new task. He was arranged by List to train the children brought by the serfs. At present, there were a total of 354 children between the ages of 3 and 10 among the local and purchased serfs in the flower town. Marcus needed to divide them into several groups according to gender, age, physique, intelligence quotient, and other aspects. When the time came, List would arrange for suitable instructors to train the children. In order for the future loyal retainers to become Earth Knights, he had to start from the children. Sir Lord. The patrolman guarding outside Glanny and Brad's house immediately saluted when they saw List. Magic apprentice Charlie opened the door, stuck his head out and instinctively shrunk back. Sir Baron, do you want to come in? The original Charlie did not understand manners. But now Charlie was in awe of List. The reason was very simple. List used Dosen to scare him, making him wet his pants. Since then, when Charlie met List, he did not dare to be impolite. Is your teacher working? Yes, the teacher is making the second crystal lamp. List entered the house and quickly saw the busy Glanny and Brad. Brad had already started carving the 5th crystal, while Glanny had just finished a lamp. Chapter 161. A pair of crystal lamps were taken away. Back in the castle, List ordered the servants to install the crystal lamps in his study. The lamps made of white crystal emitted a gentle white light, much like natural light, although not as strong as the sun. Just one crystal lamp was as bright as 10 candles. About 50 watts of incandescent light, not strong enough, it is best to install 2 more. Installing 3 crystal lamps in a room was the most suitable level of brightness. More dazzling, less dim. These crystal lamps could be lit for several years and they would always be lit. They could also be designed to be switched on and off at any time, but it would require a high level of technical carving and was not cost-effective. The value of crystal was indeed high, but the price was not unacceptable. Tulip Castle had hundreds of crystal lamps. It was a bright castle from day to night, never falling into darkness. Many nobles liked to use crystal-carved tableware. After the enfeoffment, List also received a set of exquisite crystal tableware. Although its magic power was exhausted, it was still used to entertain distinguished guests. The bedroom also needs to be installed with crystal lamps and then a lampshade. In this way there is no need to turn off the light. As long as the lampshade is turned off, it is equivalent to turning off the light. He was used to sleeping in the dark. He couldn't sleep with the lights on. He instructed the servants to correct the position of the crystal lamps. With Glanny's speed, it would take about 3 to 5 days to finish the 10 crystal lamps. 10 lamps could at most maintain the use of 5 rooms, but he did not intend to add more. It was a bit out of line to take out so many crystals at once. It was better to keep a low profile. Besides, 3 lamps in the study, 2 in the living room, 2 in the dining room, 2 in the bedroom, and 1 in the bathroom were enough for him. Master, Mr. Marcus is here, waiting for you in the living room. Carter came over. What did Teacher Marcus say? He came to report on the night training of the serf children. List thought for a moment and said, inform Karl Hammerstein and Rome Wintong to come over. In addition, call my 12 retainer knight over. I want to hold a meeting. He went downstairs. He saw Marcus. Sir Marcus greets you. Good day. List said as he allowed Thomas to fix his bow tie. Teacher Marcus, let's talk under the apple tree. I've also invited some others to discuss night training. The apple tree was a wild fruit tree not far from the castle gate. There were stone benches and wooden tables under the tree. List often read or pondered under the tree. Unfortunately, the apples were already ripe in this season. Therefore, for the time being, he couldn't learn from Newton, get hit in the head by an apple, and then come up with the epic-making law of gravity. Next year, when the tree bore apples again, he would definitely ponder on astrophysics, magic, and battle chi under the tree. Apples are good stuff. 3 apples can change the world. List sat down and pointed at the apple tree with a smile. Marcus was confused. Apples are delicious, but how can they change the world? Do you know how humans came to be? We are the rulers of nature. We were born at the same time as this continent, sir. Well, looking at Marcus's serious answer, List suddenly felt bored. This Earth Night was not a humorous subject. Therefore he made a long story short. There is a legend that the first two people ate apples and created the current human race. Marcus asked, then why did 3 apples change the world? Eating the forbidden fruit, gravity, iPhone. List regretted starting this topic. He could only talk nonsense. Later, some people ate apples and cultivated battle chi. Some ate apples and created magic. Of course, these are all legends. From the night novels, the authors of those novels have a good imagination. Those wizards? They can't change the world. The world belongs to the night. After talking nonsense for a while, Carl and Rome had arrived. The retainer knight was also gathered under the apple tree. Looking at Marcus, Carl, Rome, and the upright retainer knight, List suddenly thought of King Arthur and his round table conference. The fictional king of ancient Britain liked to hold meetings around a round table with his knight. The Europeans wrote a lot of stories about King Arthur and the round table knight. The Japanese also wrote a lot of stories about King Arthur. If I become king one day in the future, will the table under the apple tree be called the apple table or the apple table conference by future generations? Will Marcus, Carl, and Rome be called the apple android knight by future generations? Maybe they should be called the apple knight? List's thoughts were fleeting. He said seriously, Teacher Marcus, has the grouping of the young serfs been completed? Yes, Your Excellency. Of the 354 young children, excluding the deformed and untrainable 26, there are 328 left. There are 169 boys and 159 girls. In accordance with Your Excellency's instructions, I have divided the girls into a separate group, and the boys into a passing group and a failing group. The girls will be trained by Rome. List directly made a decision. The purpose of the training is to strengthen their bodies and facilitate future work arrangements. If there are outstanding seedlings who can cultivate chi, then other arrangements will be made. Rome immediately stood up and saluted. As you wish, I will train these girls strictly. Women cultivating chi was not mainstream. At least, most of the lords would choose boys when they chose a knight. However, it was not fixed. There were many lords who trained female knight. Sister Elvira trained a group of girls to form a female knight squad. Of course, she also trained more boys. List did not train girls to form a female knight squad. Instead, he hoped that women could also increase their strength and do some heavy work in the future. In other words, he wanted to completely contract the work of farming and liberate the male labor force. Men could go to workshops as workers and do more physically demanding work such as repairing roads, bridges, shipbuilding, and so on. More importantly, if a woman's physique became stronger, the difficulty of childbirth would be reduced, and the survival rate of the baby would greatly increase. In addition, if a few talented female knight emerged, they could be taken in as retainer knight. If it was a beautiful female knight with fair skin, they could then be transferred to a personal guard. Wouldn't that be wonderful? The failing group will be trained by Carl. List put away his thoughts and continued, the training for the failing group will be the same as for the girls' group. It is best to strengthen the body and cultivate chi. In the future, among this group of people, those who have chi can join the patrol team and the insect guard team. Those who don't have chi can build roads and bridges. Carl stood up and accepted the order, as you wish. Finally, the passing group will be trained by Teacher Marcus. They will be the future night guards of the territory. Philip, Xavier, you two retainer knight will take turns to assist Teacher Marcus. Train the passing group. I think we should divide the passing group into smaller groups according to their age and train them separately. Chapter 162. As the meeting progressed, the number of participants gradually expanded. Gort, Isaiah, Blair, as well as Old Grandet and Costo joined. The contents of the meeting ranged from the training of young serfs to the future planning of the flower town. At noon, the Apple Table meeting was a complete success. The meeting decided to establish the flower town's Knight Academy. Because the territory was just a small town, the Knight Academy was kept secret. Academy was just an internal designation and not a permanent institution. Anyone who participated in the training of the Knight Academy would concurrently serve as an instructor and receive a salary of 2 copper coins per day. The list of the first 8 instructors was as follows. Etiquette Instructor Gort Mast, responsible for training the young serfs on how to be loyal to the Lord. The instructor of the Knight Squad, Marcus Wheeler, was responsible for training the Knight Squad's reserve members, namely the young serfs who had passed. The instructor of the patrol team, Karl Eisenhammer, was in charge of training the young serfs of the patrol team who had failed the test. The worm protection team instructor, Rome Weinbarrel, was responsible for training the worm protection team candidates, the young serfs of the girl group. Administrative instructor Isaiah Moss, responsible for teaching the young serfs administrative skills. Serpentine instructor Blair Steele, responsible for teaching the young serfs serpentine to read and write. Windspeak instructor Grandette Shortbench, responsible for teaching the young serfs Windspeak to read and write. Navigation instructor Costo Footprint, responsible for teaching the young serfs nautical knowledge. At the same time, the Division of Labor of the Flower Town's administrative office officials was adjusted, as well as the salary regulations. Among them, the consultant was paid 20 copper coins per day, the administrative officer was paid 10 copper coins per day, and the administrative officer assistant was paid 5 copper coins per day. The list was as follows. Flower Town's consultant and diplomat Gort Mast, responsible for overseeing the affairs of the Flower Town as well as foreign affairs. Administrative officer and legal officer Isaiah Moss, responsible for the administration of the Flower Town as well as legal affairs. Administrative officer assistant Odin Insole. Financial officer Blair Steele, responsible for the financial affairs of the Flower Town. Assistant financial officer Gray Sickle. Defense officer Carl Hammerstein, responsible for the patrol team. Worm protection officer Rome Winespot, responsible for the worm protection team. Costo Footprint, seaman in charge of navigation. It was expected that there would be a separate legal officer in charge of legal punishment and a diplomat in charge of foreign affairs, but there were no suitable officials for the positions at the moment. Both Old Grandette and Captain Costo were serfs, acting in the office of an official. They needed enough credit to get List to be exempted from his serf status and become an official. Therefore they were treated like serfs, much lower than official officials. Even so, the two of them were so excited that they crawled on the ground and kissed the tips of List's leather shoes. To them this was List giving them a chance to change their fate. Moreover, he gave them a window to the nobility. As long as the future lord continued to obtain glory, as officials who followed him, they would naturally be rewarded. Even if they couldn't, their descendants would have a higher starting point to strive for the glory of nobility. The glory of the night favors the Flower Town, favors Sir Lord, favors each and every one of us. At the luncheon, Gort was very excited. The more prosperous Flower Town was, the more his importance and power as an advisor was highlighted. He was not worried about being challenged and shaking his position. Only aristocrats could serve as advisors, and in Flower Town, apart from List, he was the only aristocrat. At least for a few years this pattern was unlikely to change. He was so excited that he almost got drunk from drinking beer. Under the leadership of Sir Baron List, the prosperity of Flower Town is just around the corner. Let's raise our glasses and drink to the Lord. Cheers to the Lord. For Gort's flattery. List was automatically immune and calm. Flower Town has passed the difficult initial stage and is now in a stage of rapid development. With the help of the smoke mission, his vision is not something that Gort and others can guess. After the luncheon, the officials returned to their posts. List left Costo alone. Captain Costo, how is the sailor training going? It's almost done. I have already started the trial. Just wait for a heavy rain at sea to test the sailor's ability to adapt, and then we can sail to Black Horse Island. Costo replied excitedly. I don't need to repeat the importance of Black Horse Island. Pay attention to confidentiality during training. Please rest assured, Sir Lord, I did not mention a word about Black Horse Island in front of the sailors. Well done, keep working hard. Yes, Sir Lord. The sun was setting. Time flies and the afternoon passed. List had just returned from an inspection of the thorns, worms, fungus bushes. He happened to meet Tom, the manservant who came looking for him. Master, the flower caravan transport team has brought back a magician named Elksun Truth. He is waiting for you in the castle. Got it? The magician was the falconer invited by Glanny Truth. When List came to the castle gate, he happened to see the other party wearing the iconic black magic cloak, completely covering his body. To be honest, List has always been curious. Why do magicians like to wear black cloaks? He himself wore a black cloak, but he also had red, gray and blue cloaks. Baron List, Elksun Truth greets you. Elksun was more polite than Glanny and bowed slightly. List responded, Welcome to Flower Town, Mr. Elksun. The town is beautiful, quiet and peaceful. I'm glad to work here. By the way, where is His Excellency Magician Glanny Truth? I received an invitation from him. He's making crystal lamps. Inside the castle, the servant served tea and List asked directly, I heard that you can train falcons. I asked Mr. Glanny to invite you to help me train a World of Warcraft, the Wind Peregrine Falcon. It's in season for test flight, but it can't release magic wind blades yet. Elksun said calmly, First of all, I have never trained falcons in World of Warcraft. I have only trained ordinary falcons. It's hard to guarantee whether I can train the Wind Peregrine Falcon. Train it as much as you can. If it doesn't succeed, it's okay. It just so happens that Mr. Glanny wants to use World of Warcraft materials to make a magic equipment for me. List smiled. If the training is successful, I will provide you with 2 gold coins as a reward. Even if the training fails, there will be 1 gold coin as a reward. You are very generous. Elksun was satisfied with the price. I will do my best. Elksun was a very good person to chat with compared to a magician like Glanny who had a bad temper, a rigid brain, and could not see the situation clearly. List's abundant knowledge, interesting demeanor, slightly respectful tone, and sonorous steel voice all made List have a good impression of him. The steel voice popular in the upper class is indeed much better than the poor dialect of Coral Island. Not afraid of not knowing the goods, but afraid of comparing the goods. Chapter 163. What a beautiful creature. The eagle is a divine bird and so is the falcon. Even an eagle raised from a young age yearns for freedom, not to be a loyal dog. Elksun looked at the Wind Peregrine Falcon on the windowsill and marveled. Trembling Woods, who was chained outside the castle, suddenly sneezed for some reason. You mean the eagle can't obey orders? List frowned. His idea was to train the Wind Peregrine Falcon to be loyal and obedient like Dosen. They can be close to the people who raise them, but there is no way to force them to recognize their master except to subdue them. Domesticating an eagle is actually forcing it to change its habits as an eagle by constantly applying external forces. How to change, how to train. Burn. Burn? Yes, the most important thing to subdue the arrogant character of the eagle is to keep it awake, keep it hungry, and completely break its mind in order to change its habits. Let it hunt its prey in the way it was designed and not run away after flying out. Elksun has many years of eagle training experience and spoke in front of List, including the tools used to train the eagle, the steps, and the different ways to deal with different eagles. Later he is going to spend 40 days to summarize the training methods of the Wind Peregrine Falcon, and strive to break its mind and make it a puppet of the eagle trainer so that it can be completely subdued. After listening to him, List felt inexplicably awkward. Especially the means of domestication. Burn the eagle so that the eagle can't sleep, so that its mind is lost. Starving the eagle, constantly wrapping meat with hemp, letting the eagle eat it to clear its stomach, and then drawing out the hemp to keep the eagle hungry. Trapping the eagle, putting a hat on the eagle's eyes so that it can't escape even if the rope is released. Tripping the eagle, tying a rope to the eagle's legs so that it can't stretch its legs to hunt. The whole training process is the process of repeatedly torturing the eagle. He couldn't help but ask, Mr. Elksun, is an eagle trained in this way still an eagle? Elksun, who was talking endlessly, was obviously stunned and then laughed. Baron List, eagles are just beasts. Humans domesticate beasts either to eat, ride, or plow the fields and use them as tools. Eagle taming is just a more complicated tool. Is there no other relatively gentler way? List thought that he was not a soft-hearted person, and his treatment of Stupid Woman was very cruel. But Blessed Curls was not the same as Stupid Woman. Blessed Curls was taken care of little by him. It was not an ordinary World of Warcraft. Besides, it was a reward for the smoke mission, so it was pretty cool. I'm sorry, my lord. Elksun said calmly. I understand your point of view. It is true that the method of training the eagle is cruel, but compared to the harvest, this cruelty is nothing. The Wind Peregrine Falcon is just a World of Warcraft. If you don't tame it, it will resist and escape sooner or later. It will only bring you trouble. It made sense. After a while, List put away the kindness in his heart and said, All right, from tomorrow onwards, Blessed Curls will be trained by you. I still need your cooperation. It's best if you can spare 5 hours a day to train it with me. Only then will it surrender to you. Blessed Curls was still rattling on the windowsill. He didn't know that his fate was about to sink. List took a deep breath and suddenly changed his mind. Mr. Elksun, why don't you wait another 2 days? You can help me make the crystal lamps first. It's hard for Mr. Glanny to make the crystal lamps in a short time. He hoped that Blessed Curls could enjoy it for another 2 days, and he also hoped to speed up the progress of the Thorn's Worm quest. If you really need it, I'd be happy to help you. In the evening, Elksun met with Glanny. Glanny, it's nice to meet you again. It's been half a year since we last met. I wanted to visit Moss Town several times, but I was delayed. Glanny's face was cold. If it weren't for Baron List needing a hawk, I wouldn't have written to you at all. It seems that you have a deep prejudice against me. It's a pity. Baron List wants us to work together to make all the crystal lamps as soon as possible. Work together with you? Are you kidding me? List had been letting the two mages greet each other. Seeing that it was going to be unpleasant, he said, Mr. Glanny, you can rest assured that your reward will not be reduced. I just hope to speed up the production of crystal lamps as soon as possible. The Black Pearl magic equipment has to be made as soon as possible. I don't think working with him will speed up the progress of the work. Not all mages know how to make magic equipment. Elk Sun kept smiling. Sir Glanny, I recognize that your skills are good, but please don't belittle me like that. Even if my skills are not good enough, it's normal for two people to work together. Besides, Baron List has said that he will pay me separately and will not rob you of your business. Glanny still wanted to speak. List said impatiently, well, that's settled. Now let's start the dinner to welcome Mr. Elk Sun. I hope he will have a good time in Flower Town. Elk Sun smiled and saluted. Thank you for your hospitality. I walked around Flower Town and have fallen in love with the beautiful scenery and people here, as well as its thriving style. Look. List blushed a little when he heard what she said. He thought that mages were like Glanny, but now he knows that among mages, there are also elegant figures like nobles. When the dinner began, the town officials joined. The atmosphere became more lively and Glanny's wit, humor and erudition quickly won everyone's favor. Glanny, on the other hand, had a cold face all the way, eating and drinking by himself, out of place at the banquet. In the next 2 days, with the addition of Elk Sun, the production of crystal lamps really sped up. By the morning of the third day, 10 crystal lamps were successfully made. All the crystal lamps have been installed in the castle. Mr. Glanny, next, make the Black Pearl magic equipment as soon as possible. List actually regretted choosing to use him to make magic equipment. However, the basic integrity of a person was a must, so he did not show too much emotional change towards Glanny. Glanny still had the same indifferent expression, with pride in his eyes. What are you going to name it? It will definitely be an excellent magic equipment. It must have a name that matches its temperament, so that my magic equipment making skills will not be in vain. Dinghai Pearl, I've already thought about it. Dinghai Pearl? Glanny thought for a moment and said bluntly, it's a common name. How about the Eye of the Storm, which is more imposing than the Dinghai Pearl and more in line with its positioning? Eye of the Storm? Dinghai Pearl? Chapter 164. List sent away the blind Glanny. List closed the door, waved his hand in the bright study and summoned the smoke mission. Mission completed. Reward, the magic ingredient variant fast-growing thorns. Magic ingredient. Seeing these two serpentines, List's pupils suddenly dilated. The mutation that he yearned for was finally realized. Sure enough, the thorns gave birth to a magic ingredient. It was a wise choice not to cut off the ordinary fast-growing thorns. Although the fast-growing iron thorns were practical, they were not as important as the magic ingredient. Especially now that he had entered the elite Earth Knight sequence, he needed a magic ingredient. It was like a timely rain, drenching his heart and making him feel refreshed. The smoke in front of him slowly changed, forming new serpentines. Mission. The outbreak of 5 varieties of variant thorns is the desire of the thorn sprite to evolve. It launched a fierce battle against fate. As its contract master, you should lend a helping hand. Please provide the thorn sprite with a new variety of thorns. Reward, a sprite. Seeing this, List's pupils dilated again. The thorn sprite chain mission has finally reached the last round. My first sprite is a thorn sprite. I thought it was the least likely to evolve successfully, but I didn't expect it to evolve first. There is no new variety of thorns in the Flower Town. It seems that I have to look outside. Thinking of this, he didn't hesitate for a moment. He directly summoned his retainer knight Philip and Xavier, the 2 trainee knight who first cultivated chi and were the most promising to break through to the Earth Knight rank, were the focus of List's training. Philip, Xavier, I have a mission for you. The teenager's immature face had been tanned, and his eyes were no longer dull but firm. I am willing to serve, sir. Philip, go to the Coral City and tell Captain Harpagon to mobilize all the caravans to look for thorns. I don't want ordinary thorns, I want an unusual variety of thorns. Philip responded in a capable manner. Understood. Xavier, go with the thorns caravan. The same mission is to find an unusual variety of thorns. Also, call Teacher Marcus when you leave. As you wish. Xavier quickly called over Marcus, who was training the young serfs. Sir, are you looking for me? Follow me. Liszt took Marcus to the insect room on the second floor and showed him the increasingly fat thorn sprite. Teacher Marcus, you are my most trusted person. Take a look at these sprite. Do you see anything? Marcus rarely saw sprite worms. This did not mean that he knew little about sprite worms. As someone who aspired to become an aristocrat, he had inquired a lot about sprite worms. So when he saw the thorns worm, he was stunned. My lord, this thorns worm, has it entered the fat pupa stage? 4 kinds of thorns have been produced in a row. This thornworm of mine is not an ordinary thornworm. It has a strong desire to evolve. I feel it now, it wants to evolve urgently, so I want to help it. I need you to go to Tulip Castle as well as Beer Castle and Crush Stone Castle. My lord, what is the task you gave me? Contact them and ask about the thorns worm. I guess there are thorns worms in all 3 places. At least there are 2 in Tulip Castle. If they also have a non-ordinary variety of thorns, talk to them for me. I will take the thorn worm to assimilate these thorns. Thomas nodded, then frowned and asked, My lord, do you think it is possible for the thorns worm to break through into a sprite? Why not? Perhaps the probability is very low, but nothing is absolute. Even if there is only a slight possibility, I will not give up. I need the thorn sprite to take care of the fast-growing iron thorns for me, understand? Understood, I will set off now. I will write 3 letters for you to take with you. Marcus set off with 3 letters. Liszt was not idle either. He took Dosen, said hello to Elkson, who was ready to train Blessed Curls, and set off for the thorns bush. He was looking for a new magic potion to mutate the fast-growing variety of thorns, which he called fast-growing magic thorns. Fast-growing thorns, fast-growing poisonous thorns, fast-growing iron thorns, fast-growing magic thorns. The benefits brought by the thorns worm are already very rich. Now that it is about to break through, the benefits that thorns can bring in the future will be even richer. Riding on the back of Black Dragon. He suddenly thought of a very serious question. After I have a sprite, I can probably choose to change my surname, right? Some nobles will change their surname for their sprites. Usually, after having a greater sprite, they will change their surname to declare the glory of the family. But greater sprites are rare, so many small nobles have learned from them and changed their surname after getting a lesser sprite. Greater sprites live for 200 years and lesser sprites live for 100 years, which can continue the glory of the family for several generations. Tulip family, which began in the Earl's era, the tulip sprite evolved into a greater tulip sprite, and the surname changed from Tile to Tulip. The tulip family of Beer Castle, which has a tulip sprite, directly changed its surname to Tulip. The Gravel family of Gravel Castle, which also has a lesser sprite, did not change its surname. Perhaps it was because it was ambitious and wanted to get a greater sprite before changing its surname, or perhaps it was because it was shy and embarrassed to use a lesser sprite as its surname. In short, I can now change my surname to Thorns. Liszt, Thorns. It doesn't sound as noble as Liszt, Tulip. Forget it, I won't change it. I will continue to be a tulip, keep a distance from Tulip Castle, and continue to get some benefits from the Earl in the future. Liszt went to the Thorns worm grass bush. The worm protection team came forward and saluted. He directly cast magic eyes and observed the thorns. The thorns worm grass was the most conspicuous and full of magic. A moment later, Liszt found a new sign of magic in the corner of the bush and determined the location of the fast-growing magic thorns. The fast-growing magic thorns were not conspicuous. On the contrary, compared to the surrounding fast-growing thorns, it was even shorter. This shortness did not refer to the shortness of its seedling stage, but the overall appearance of the plant. Looking at its appearance, it was definitely more than a month old. The branches were fully extended, but the height only reached his calf. Chaos attributed magic, the same as Black Tulip. Not bad, not bad. In this way I have a new magic potion to use. The most important thing is that this is a fast-growing variety of magic potion. It is simply a gold coin production line. Liszt touched the fast-growing magic thorns. Its thorns were small and blunt, and basically had no lethality. Next to it was a fast-growing thorn. The thorns gleamed coldly as if they were ready to kill at any time. I have to protect this fast-growing magic thorns. The other types of thorns around it, from head to root, should be uprooted to make room for it to grow. Liszt decided on the plan to cultivate the fast-growing magic thorns. He had a new worry. The fast-growing magic thorns need thorns worm to increase production, and the fast-growing iron thorns also need thorns worm to increase production. How should I distribute them? You can't have your cake and eat it too. He could only hope that the thorns worm would break through the thorn lesser sprite as soon as possible and affect a larger range of thorns. He stood up and looked at the more than 100 acres of thorns worm grass bush. It was as if he saw a steady stream of magic potions and high-quality wood. Chapter 165. Oh heavens! After receiving the notice, Gort rushed to the Garden of Thorns. He immediately opened his mouth wide and described in an exaggerated manner, "I can't believe this is true magic ingredient thorns? I thought that Flower Town was a place of night glory, but now I understand that this is more like the birthplace of night glory." The birthplace of night glory? I like that, Advisor Gort. There may be more surprises that you can't imagine. List pretended to be mysterious. With the existence of the smoke mission, everything here was a matter of course. Dragon. Smoke dragon. A dragon that could create a country, so this little benefit was nothing. Are there more surprises? Of course you will know soon. List was referring to the evolution of Thorn Sprite. He believed that news of a new variety of thorns would soon come back. When the time came after the assimilation of the Thorn Sprite, what would be obtained would be a magical Thorn's lesser sprite. He did not tell Gort, as Gort's big mouth could not keep secrets. As for the evolution of Thorn Sprite, he was not ready to announce it until the moment of success. He was only going to let Marcus know. List trusted Marcus very much. His family had settled down in Flower Town. He skipped the topic. List said, "Teacher Gort, the Garden of Thorns can be transplanted and planned. My idea is to transplant the fast-growing thorns and poisonous thorns to the edge of Thorns Ridge and surround Flower Town to prevent it from being invaded by World of Warcraft or thieves." This is a big project. Gort looked embarrassed. It may not be possible for a short time. The autumn harvest has arrived, and I am organizing the serfs to harvest this year's crops. Then wait until after the autumn harvest to arrange the Garden of Thorns. But for now, arrange for people to dig up the ordinary thorns around the fast-growing magic thorns, so that the magic ingredient thorns can grow and multiply. As you wish. After a while, the insect officer who was inspecting the worm stalks rum wine barrel also hurried over. List then added, "We need to strengthen the protection of the Garden of Thorns. There will be at least 4 insect protectors in each squad. They will be divided into 8-hour shifts." Understood. Also, I will buy a few big drums and place them in the wooden houses where the insect guards are on duty. If there is a situation, they will directly hit the drums to alert us. After making the appropriate arrangements, he reluctantly left the Garden of Thorns. Back at the castle, Elksun Truth has designed a complete set of tools for training blessed curls, including eagle sprout, eagle tripod, eagle canteen, eagle gloves, eagle cage sleeves, falcon platform, false bait, and a series of equipment. These were all precisely made according to Blessed Curl's body shape. It wasn't too expensive, but it wasn't cheap either. There were so many of them that it would cost at least 1 gold coin. Baron List, we're about to enter the eagle taming phase. Please refrain from feeding blessed curls. As for the rest, leave it to me to make it unable to sleep. In the end, I will completely surrender to the arrogant head below you. Got it. List reached out and touched Blessed Curls. Although Blessed Curls wouldn't bite List, it would avoid his touch. It didn't like anyone touching it. In the following time, Blessed Curls training began. Moving out of the castle and locked in a separate falcon room, Elksun stared at Blessed Curls and recorded his detailed data. It must be said that this witty and humorous magician, instead of doing magic work, worked as a breeder, which was quite interesting. "Mr. Elksun, what magic are you good at?" "Earth and water." "Let me ask you a curious question. How did you become a magician?" Elksun recalled, "Baron List, I was born in a serf's family. It happened that my teacher passed through Snake Spear City and went to the town where my family lived to pick some plants. He needed a helper and chose me. After that, he asked me if I would like to explore the truth with him, and I said yes." "So you are from Snake Spear City." "My family was originally a serf in Midway Island. When I was a child, because the Lord Viscount Clare angered the Marquis of Deep Throat Island, I was exiled to a deserted island. So my family and I came to Coral Island and settled in Snake Spear City, but my parents have died and I am now alone." The Marquis of Deep Throat Island, full name Wallace Pineapple Green, one of the 7 marquises of the Grand Duchy. The Viscount of Small Kerchief Island, whose brother, the Viscount of Big Kerchief Island, was a nobleman of the Marquis of Deep Throat Island. As for Midway Island, List had never heard of it and knew nothing about Viscount Clare. But in the early years, the Tulip family acquired Coral Island and bought a large number of serfs from all over the world. Presumably, Elksun was bought as a serf to Coral Island at that time. Chatting for a while, List suddenly asked, "Mr. Elksun, do you know fire magic?" "I'm not proficient, but I'm sure I will." "Then I have a batch of fire magic potions. Can you make them into magic potions for me?" List decided to hand over the production of magic potions to Elksun. Elksun raised his eyebrows slightly and smiled. "I won't refuse to make money. On the path to truth, gold coins are indispensable. Knowledge is never free. Mages like to make bottles and cans and study all kinds of explosive and dangerous things. These materials have to be bought with gold coins. As a class outside the aristocratic system, if they want to earn gold coins, they have to work by themselves. Making magic potions, making magic equipment. Mages who specialize in ice may also make some ice cubes for sale. Of course, some mages will choose to join the aristocratic system. For example, serving as a court mage or a magic consultant of the aristocracy and enjoying the nobility's offerings. But mages like Elksun and Glanny certainly can't enjoy the treatment of offerings. They can only work by themselves to make money and by knowledge to explore the truth. Tulip Castle has a mage who specializes in the production of magic potions. He lives in seclusion and is not short of money. The two can only do odd jobs and live a semi-secluded life. Then I will entrust you to help me make the flame mushroom magic potion in my hands. I will build a flame mushroom processing workshop in Shiitake Town and cooperate with you for a long time. How about it?" List had intended to keep Glanny, but now he felt that Elksun was a better choice. Elksun seemed a little hesitant. "Will you stay in Flower Town for a long time?" "There is no need to stay here for a long time. The production of flame mushrooms is limited. I can make all the flame mushroom magic potions in about a week a month. In that case, I am willing to cooperate." After Elksun nodded, he wondered, "Baron List, why don't you cooperate with Tulip Castle? Isn't it the same to make a finished product and cooperate again? There is no loss in transportation costs. Maybe we can make more money." Chapter 166. Elksun presided over the construction of the flame mushroom processing workshop and cooked the eagle every day. Glanny devoted himself to the production of the calm pearl. Gort and other officials presided over the autumn harvest of Flower Town. The town's civilians also joined the harvest team, harvesting wheat, barley, naked wheat, leveling the wasteland, picking wild fruits, picking vegetables and collecting tulip capsules. After autumn came a long winter of ice and snow, and all crops in Flower Town would stop growing. "Master, this is the newly picked black nightshade today." Butler Carter brought over a plate of small black fruits. With the blessing of the black nightshade sprite worm, the output of the black nightshade field soared, and a plate of fruit could be harvested every day. This thing tasted really good, but it was uncomfortable to eat too much of it. List only tasted it occasionally and gave the rest to his subordinates. Since the outbreak of the thorn sprite worm, the black nightshade sprite worm has become the most useless sprite worm. The black nightshade sprite worm has a low output and cannot be sold in bulk. It can only be used as a flavoring modifier. However, with the example of the thorn sprite worm, List will not underestimate the black nightshade sprite worm. Who knows if one day the black nightshade sprite worm will have a big outbreak, triggering a series of tasks and evolving into a black nightshade sprite. "You try it too." "Thank you, master." After eating a few black nightshade fruits, List asked, "It's almost October and winter will come in 2 months. Have you started preparing the food stockpiled in the warehouse?" "I have entrusted Captain Harpagon and Captain Sherlock to be ready to purchase newly harvested wheat at any time. Wheat alone is not enough. Corn, beans, salt, sugar and so on should be purchased. Even in winter, I don't want the castle's food conditions to decline." List didn't want to be wronged. "I will inform Advisor Gort to build a warehouse near the castle to store winter supplies." Suddenly, he thought of something. "By the way, remember to remind me to ask someone to build an ice house in Flower Town." "Yes, master." Making ice with saltpeter is indeed very convenient, and it can be recycled. However, it was a pity that it would be consumed in the process of using it. Currently, out of the 300 kilograms of saltpeter powder, only 260 kilograms were left. A total of 40 to 50 kilograms had been consumed. In another year and a half, there would be no way to make ice. A new saltpeter mine could not be found even if one wanted to. Therefore, in the end, it was still necessary to dig a large ice cellar and store the ice in winter for use in the coming year. Warehouse, ice house, falcon house, kennel, dog prison, stupid woman, apple table, stable, clamshell. List found that the castle, which was supposed to be independent on the hillside and surrounded by green grass, was almost surrounded by all kinds of illegal buildings. No, the warehouse and the icehouse have to be built far away. The dog kennel will be moved to the castle's main entrance. The falcon platform can be moved to the top platform of the castle and build a third floor in the form of a loft. The apple table, the apple tree and the giant clam shell can be considered the scenery, but the stables have to be moved a little further. The reason why there was an empty space around the castle. It was to set up a circle of safety where one could not hide and prevent assassins from sneaking in. Not only do we have to remove the illegal buildings, but we also have to plant a circle of hedges and dig a moat. If financial and material resources permit, we also have to strengthen the castle walls, especially the main entrance. It is best to build a bridge-type gate. The castle relied on the terrain. The gate could be built in a very high position and then connected to the outside with a bridge. People could walk directly under the bridge. This made it difficult for the attacker to have a large number of night charge at the same time, thus ensuring that the castle would not be taken in a short time. Winning time for friendly support. Speaking of which, Flower Town was unlikely to be attacked. After all, List was the Count's son and the Tulip family's bloodline was the flag on this island. But in case the pirates had to attack, a well-fortified castle could save lives. If I want to carefully complete the castle, I need a lot of money. I am indeed very rich, with tens of millions of fixed assets. But the liquidity, even with the support of the seafood business, is still not enough to make ends meet. It's a headache. A castle that could have its own name. At the very least, it had to be able to support the independent living conditions of the castle, with sufficient food, solid defenses and a water source. The Tulip Castle built on a cliff had a fountain. Even if it was besieged by troops and horses, it could persist for at least half a year or even a year. In this regard, Flower Town's castle was very deficient. Without a water source, it had to be fetched from the town's well. Should I look for an opportunity to sell some mithril, crystals and jades? Let's talk about it after exchanging them for several thousand gold coins. The high-value items he could sell were a chest of magic metal mithril, a chest of dragon mineral crystals, and a chest of magic stones and jades, as well as the remaining 10 or so black pearls. Black pearls were extremely valuable, especially the basin-sized and basketball-sized black pearls. They were excellent navigational tools, while the smaller black pearls could also be made into personal defensive accessories. It wasn't cost-effective to sell them now. Giant clams weren't something that could be seen often, especially such a big giant clam. The remaining mithril, crystals and jades were all good things with a price but no market. He was also reluctant to sell them. Forget it, let's not think about it. It's not time for me to lie down and enjoy myself. I still have to fight. The more he thought about it, the more excited he became. He couldn't stay in the castle. He simply took the knight and Dosen, who was getting stronger and stronger. He wandered around. He went to the dog prison to see the pregnant stupid woman and let Dosen get intimate with her. He went to the dairy farm to see the 3 pregnant cows and touched their bellies to see the calves that were likely to be dragon cows. He went to the fruit-stealing monkey training ground in the oyster settlement to see the very obedient fruit-stealing monkeys climbing trees to pick fragrant coconuts, and the 3 female monkeys with bulging bellies. He went to the wheat settlement to see the 12 big fat pigs in the pig farm. In winter these big fat pigs can be slaughtered for meat. There was also the growth of each sprite worm stalk. The day was over. He turned around again. 3 days passed in a trance. There was no news of finding new varieties of thorns for the time being. List had been training Blessed Curls with Elk Sun. Blessed Curls, who had not eaten or drunk for 3 days, had a hoarse voice and could not sleep. His eyes were red. After seeing List, his cries were particularly tragic. Gigi. Gigi. The handsome appearance had already disappeared, and only a large fat bird with messy feathers remained. After calling for a long time, List did not feed it any food. Blessed Curls seemed to be exhausted and fell from the platform. List was just about to go up and help it up. Elk Sun stopped him. Baron List, now is a good time to defeat Blessed Curls. Don't interrupt it or it will take more time. Hasn't it been subdued yet? No, it hasn't bowed its head, so it's not subdued. Well, you continue to train the eagle. List shook his head, glanced at Blessed Curls, who got up from the ground and turned to go out. Even after walking for a long distance, he could still hear Blessed Curls' blood-curdling screams. Chapter 167. At the end of October, the weather turned cold. The atmosphere in the castle was getting more and more depressing, mainly because the mood of the owner, List, was getting worse and worse. The Flower Town was thriving. More than 400 new serfs quickly integrated into the Flower Town. The autumn harvest harvested a lot of food every day, filling the warehouse. In such an atmosphere he should be happy. However, the news from the flower caravan made him very uneasy. His tone was slightly gloomy. Harpagon, the flower caravan covers so many small towns in the seafood business and has established a huge information network. Yet, you can't even find a different type of thorn? Harpagon knelt on the ground, frightened. The angry words of an elite Earth Knight and the extremely dissatisfied attitude of a territorial ruler put him under a lot of pressure. Sir Lord, I'm sorry Harpagon has let you down. I have let everyone in the caravan announce to the public that if you can provide a new variety of thorns, you will get a high reward. However, the thorns sent are all ordinary varieties. There is no variety that meets your requirements. Have you searched all the areas covered by the flower caravan? Birch City, Elm City, Snake Spear City, Gravel City, and the surrounding towns have all been searched. If you want to continue your search, you will have to go to the villages under the towns. Then go to the villages one by one and ask them one by one. List's temper was not directed at Harpagon, but in any case, he was very annoyed. You can directly withhold 1/10 of the flower caravan's funds for the cost of searching for new varieties of thorns. Harpagon replied cautiously, Yes, Sir Lord, Harpagon will search carefully. He got the opportunity to be promoted to the captain of the flower caravan after Grandet was promoted. He didn't want to be dismissed by List for his incompetence and be sent back to the fields. Go and do your work. List waved his hand and let Harpagon leave. Then he sat in a chair and rubbed his temples with his hands. Not only did the flower caravan not find anything, but the thorns caravan was also empty-handed. He thought that the caravans all over the Coral Island would be able to find new thorns by casually asking around. Who would have thought that they would not be able to find it? The caravan has offered a lot of rewards for finding a new variety of thorns. The civilians who get the news will definitely go crazy looking for it. There have been no results for several days, indicating that there is a great possibility that there is no new variety of thorns on Coral Island. Now we can only wait for news from Marcus. He asked the caravan and Marcus to split up and search. It was to find more species of thorns to increase the probability of the thorn sprite worm's breakthrough. The more pheromones collected, the greater the possibility of evolution. If there's no good news about Marcus, where should I look? There were none on the Coral Island, so he could only look for them on the other islands. As a minor aristocrat, his social circle was basically on the Coral Island. Counts were aristocrats directly infeoffed by the Grand Duke. Most of the surrounding islands were marquises and their followers. Their relationship with the Coral Island was not very harmonious. It was a taboo for the followers of different lords to casually interact with each other. However, there was one island that he could enter and leave at will, the Red Crab Island. List was a legitimate descendant of the Taro family. His mother was the daughter of Merlin Long Taro, the lord of the Red Crab Island, one of the 7 great marquises of the Grand Duchy, and the master of the Long Taro Castle. When he first visited Marquis Merlin, he was recruited by the sparsely populated Taro family. If I ask Grandpa Merlin, no, I only need to ask Cousin Meopal for help, then I should be able to complete the task. The huge Red Crab Island was equivalent to a province in China. How could he not find a few different varieties of thorns? Perhaps there were many different varieties of thorns in the hedges of the Long Taro Castle. Thinking of this, the irritation in his heart subsided a little. If one day I can no longer stay on the Coral Island, I will go to the Long Taro Castle for shelter. I believe that Grandpa will at least arrange a viscount fief for me. However, the Red Crab Island was a big family, so it might not be as good as the Coral Island. No matter how close a cousin is, he couldn't be closer to a relative. Suddenly, he thought of Athena Salmon, and his mood could not help but warm up a little. It's been a few months, I don't know if Athena has held hands with other nobles. I remember running in the sunset that afternoon, that was my lost youth. He was very fond of the noble lady who boldly expressed her love to him. But soon, the beautiful memories were interrupted by a mournful wail. The sound came from the falcon's room outside the castle. It was made by the tortured Blessed Curls. The irritation that had just subsided came back. He got up, walked out of the castle and went to the falcon's room. Elksun was sitting opposite the falcon, his eyes bloodshot. Seeing List arrive, he hurriedly said, Baron List. Mr. Elksun, Blessed Curls, haven't you bowed down yet? Your winged peregrine falcon, its inner pride is beyond my imagination. Elksun explained awkwardly. He thought that the eagle was in the bag, but now it was completely frozen. The winged peregrine falcon would rather starve to death than bow its head. List suddenly saw red blood on the corner of Blessed Curls' mouth. Did it vomit blood? Yes, in a long-term state of hunger, its body is on the verge of danger. If it is repeated several times, it still won't succeed. Sorry, Baron List, this is a situation I have not encountered in domesticating ordinary falcons. In other words, blessed curls may starve to death. There is such a possibility, but it is also possible that after a few days, it will bow its head. After all, World of Warcraft is just a beast. They will succumb to the threat of death. At that time, after a few more training, it will be your qualified pet. Squeak. Blessed Curls, who was vomiting blood on the falcon platform, let out a shrill scream. But its eyes did not show the slightest sign of surrender, it was still stubborn. List looked over as if he could see through those eyes, disdain for fate. Fate. It was probably the aftereffects of the smoke dragon. Recently, he often associated everything with fate. He always wanted to understand the cause and effect of fate. Fortunately, the materialistic values ingrained in him since childhood were still on the defensive. I don't think Blessed Curls will surrender to anyone. List shook his head. The winged peregrine falcon was not a caged bird. He could see from an early age that Blessed Curls yearned for the sky. Mr. Elk's son, the training ends here. I need you to spend more time on the flame mushroom magic potion. What? Elk's son was stunned. Baron List, if you give up now, all the previous efforts will be in vain, and as it grows up, there will be no second chance. Don't worry, I will pay you according to the work you have done. List decided to be capricious for once, leaving the beautiful picture to his imagination. He said, untying the rope on Blessed Curls on the platform. He personally brought meat and water to feed Blessed Curls. Blessed Curls was a World of Warcraft, and its resilience was very strong. In just half a day, it had recovered a lot of vitality. Fly, Blessed Curls. Opening the door of the falcon room, List pushed Blessed Curls. Blessed Curls was obviously not used to the current situation. It turned to look at List, its eyes flashing with confusion. But after a moment of hesitation, it finally flapped its wings and jumped off the platform. Wings fluttered and flew. Snap. It fell down. But it quickly fumbled with the instinct to fly. For the last time, it kicked off from the ground, flapped its wings, shook off 2 feathers and successfully flew into the sky. Squeak. Chapter 168. Master, Blessed Curls flew away. I know. You must be in a very bad mood right now. Of course, these damn World of Warcraft, the next time I catch them, I'll stew them directly. List complained. I fed it and let it go free, but after so long, it still didn't mature and flew away. It can be seen that there is no difference between World of Warcraft and Beast. Woof woof. Dosen protested in the kennel. List vented his dissatisfaction with Blessed Curls and turned around. There was no longer any angry expression on his face. Mr. Carter, the Thorns caravan hasn't bought the female wolfhound yet? I heard from Sherlock that we need to contact the flower caravan. There is no suitable female wolfhound for Dosen's size in North Valley City. Carter chose his words carefully. As soon as possible, or else Dosen will be suffocated sooner or later. I found that there is something wrong with the way he looks at the horses recently. Well, in order not to let Dosen suffocate, List could only train it hard. Dosen rockthorns? Poochie. A thick rockthorn pierced the ground. Dosen multiple rockthorns. Poochie poochie poochie. Poochie. A large group of thick rockthorns pierced the ground. Dosen is really good at World of Warcraft. Baron List, Dosen should be an intermediate World of Warcraft. Elk's son, who had just taken a nap, came from a distance and looked at Dosen, his eyes shining. What a beautiful big guy. King of Thorns Ridge is not enough to describe it. He already knew that Dosen had eaten the bloodline fruit. List touched Dosen's big head. In intermediate World of Warcraft, it should be a very weak one, especially since it can only release rockthorns. Multiple rockthorns is barely a new spell, but after all, it's just a superposition of rockthorns. The essence has not changed. Dosen turned around and licked List's hand. His hands were instantly covered in saliva. The valet quickly took out a handkerchief and handed it to List to wipe his hands. Elk's son laughed. It is not an adult World of Warcraft, and its understanding of magic is not very good. Even for us mages, it takes a long time to master a kind of magic, let alone World of Warcraft. As it grows older, it will automatically comprehend the power bestowed by its bloodline and guide it to release new magic. I hope so. List was not at a loss. At least now, Dosen has no natural enemies on the Coral Island. From now on, I will train it to adapt to the battlefield and help me gain glory. You will obtain countless dazzling honors just like the Count. List smiled faintly. I think so too. This was not boasting. This was called confidence. Nobles must have a thirst for glory and self-confidence. Humility will only be considered timid or unmotivated. No matter what Liszt thinks in private, on the surface he must pretend to be ready to go to the battlefield at any time and make a career. Only in this way can his subordinates follow him. Life is like a drama, it all depends on acting skills. As an experienced adult soul, coupled with the aristocratic education his predecessor received from childhood, he was undoubtedly proficient in acting. After performing, he asked, "Mr. Elkson, how is the production of the flame mushroom magic potion going?" "The reagent is being prepared, and I believe it will soon enter the production phase. The flame mushroom is a very good magic potion, and it is not difficult to extract magic power to make a potion. Then produce it as soon as possible." In the past few days, Liszt has stabilized in the elite Earth Knight stage, and he has also tried to continue practicing without the help of magic potions. But it turns out that he has no talent different from ordinary people, and he will also be limited by the bottleneck of qi, unable to increase the total amount of qi in his body. The elite Earth Knight, who usually can't afford magic potions, will instead begin to hone his qi operation skills. Constantly practicing qi operation skills can also improve strength, and through the refinement of qi secret books, the strength will increase by more than a little. An elite Earth Knight alone against 7 or 8 ordinary Earth Knight is not a problem. As a wealthy nouveau riche, Liszt wasn't in a hurry to hone his qi operation skills. Currently he was proficient in 2 qi secret books, Flame Surge Fluctuations and Fire Dragon Drill. Moreover, he was proficient in the qi secret book Multiple Arrows. Another qi secret skill, Magic Eye, was also at large success. Coupled with Black Dragon and the Red Blood Sword, his personal strength far exceeds that of Marcus. Among the elite Earth Knight he is definitely the number 1 figure. If you count Dosen, you may be able to deal with the Count. Should be possible. He has not seen the Sky Knight go all out, nor has he seen the power of the Sky Knight when charging on the battlefield, so he can only make an estimate. After all, the stronger ones in low-level World of Warcraft are said to be able to deal with the Sky Knight. Dosen is already at mid-level World of Warcraft, and with his violent Rockthorn's magic, he can make the Count suffer. Coupled with Liszt's cheering "No, the battle command," it should be possible to deal with the Count. The development of the territory is on the right track. There is no need for Liszt to do anything deliberately. So, most of the time he is looking for things to do. The young body of a 16-year-old is full of energy, and he can only find something to do by himself. He decided to inspect the progress of the production of the Calm Pearl. In the new house in Wheat Town, Glanny took the magic apprentices and lived an almost invisible life, even eating in the studio. At this point, Liszt must admit that Glanny is more dedicated than Elkson. They are both mages, but the two seem to be polar opposites. One is arrogant and paranoid, the other is humorous. Elkson is more sociable, while Glanny concentrates on his work. On the other hand, Glanny seems to be more knowledgeable. If it was a young native lord, I am afraid that Elkson's humor would be far better than Glanny's dullness. But Liszt appreciates Elkson's demeanor, but he knows how to analyze rationally. Elkson's eagle training method is very detailed, but other aspects are very vague. Especially in terms of professional knowledge, he is far less solid than Glanny. "Lord Baron, the teacher is busy, he asked you not to disturb him." Charlie, the magic apprentice, said carefully, for fear that the teacher's temper would anger Liszt. Putting away his thoughts, Liszt said, "I'm just going in to visit, I won't disturb your teacher, take me in." "Oh. Well, please keep your voice down. The teacher's work needs quiet, and he hates people disturbing his thoughts. At times like this I have been scolded by him." They entered the inner workroom of the room. The light of the crystal lamp illuminates the workbench. Glanny has his own crystal lamp, designed like a desk lamp, which is an excellent idea. There are a lot of materials and tools on the table. There are also many stoves on the side, on which large and small pots and basins are boiling, containing various colored liquids. The strange smell is mixed, and after smelling it, it is unspeakably uncomfortable. Glanny leaned over the table, using a small carving knife to constantly carve runes on basketball-sized black pearls. His brown hair was messy like a chicken's nest, and he didn't know what was dyed on it, but it was colorful. His magic cloak was also dyed into a camouflage uniform, and his whole person had a sudden aura of an evil scientist. Completely immersed. Chapter 169. He watched quietly for a moment. Liszt didn't say a word and left Glanny's studio. He didn't understand what Glanny was doing. Take good care of your teacher and pay special attention to the bottles and cans cooking on the stove. Don't let them explode. Safety is far more important than work. Before leaving, he specifically told Charlie. He was really afraid that Glanny would suddenly make an explosion. 9 out of 10 magic research accidents were explosions. Explosions in the form of various types, including but not limited to all kinds of violent magic that went off the rails. Why were there so few magicians in the world? Part of the reason was that magicians were secretive and did not have a large number of apprentices. Another part of the reason was that they died in various magic experiments and explorations. No matter how much a knight tormented his chi, he would at most kill or maim himself. If a magician had an explosion accident, his teacher and apprentices might die. It was not a pity for a magician to be killed. His sea-calming divine pearl had been destroyed, which was a heavy loss. This calm pearl would be allocated to the flowers. It just so happened that the flowers was about to embark on its first voyage to explore Black Horse Island. He also had another black pearl the size of a basketball and a black pearl the size of a wash basin. These two were reserved for the new ship in the future. Especially the black pearl the size of a wash basin. In the future, when he went to sea, this huge black pearl would be his standard to accompany him. An ordinary small black pearl could disperse the wind within 5 meters. The calm pearl, according to Glanny's estimation, could disperse the wind within 150 meters. But even if the wind was dispersed, the waves would continue to output, and the ship would still be in danger but much less. The black pearl the size of a wash basin, made into a calm pearl, might be able to disperse the wind within 300 meters. In this way, even if the waves were huge, without the help of the wind, the output would be greatly reduced, and the threat to the ship would be greatly reduced. Leaving Glanny's studio, List drove his horse to the workshop area of the town, ready to inspect the 3 newly built workshops. In the soap workshop, Burnell, the soap maker, produced the soap while leading a few apprentices. The apprenticeship system was enforced by List to prohibit serfs from keeping their craft to themselves. At the same time, a qualified apprentice would receive a certain reward from the castle. With the introduction of this system, the craftsmen, workers, and apprentices were obviously more serious. Previously, he had purchased the smithy of the old blacksmith in the town. He had given the old blacksmith a few gold coins that he would never be able to earn in his entire life, hoping that the other party would be able to groom a batch of qualified blacksmith apprentices. In the end, after forging a few thousand caddies of iron, not a single apprentice managed to learn the craft of blacksmithing. This made List very angry. Blacksmiths were free people. In essence, they only needed to pay taxes and were not restricted by the Lord. However, List still found an opportunity to teach him a lesson. The taste of meat fried with a leather whip had left a deep impression on him. Now the old blacksmith obediently taught his apprentice, wanting nothing more than to teach him. Therefore, there must be carrots and there must also be sticks. Only the carrot and the stick could carry out the Lord's will. The production of the soap is stable. The soap is limited by the pig pancreas, plus the waste in the experimental formula process, so the production is not much. Burnell reported his work progress to the visiting List. Continue to research. The current soap is almost as comfortable as perfumed soap. Perfumed soap was made from the pods of the acacia tree mixed with flowers. The cleaning effect was average, but the production cost was very expensive, especially on Coral Island, which lacked acacia trees. Only aristocrats could afford to use perfumed soap. Soap, pancreas, was made from a mixture of plant ash and pig pancreas. The pancreas of other animals may also be effective. The production cost was relatively low and the cleaning effect was also very good. However, it seemed that the level of soap developed by Burnell still needed to be improved. Therefore, the current soap workshop was still producing at a loss, and the production capacity was only provided to the castle and some officials and their families. At this time, Burnell suddenly said, "Sir Lord, when I was studying the soap formula, I had an idea. I wanted to mix soap and soap to see if I could make a better soap. So I tried it and found that the soap formed quickly and was very smooth, but I don't know if this is the soap you want." A soap mixed with soap? List felt that this idea was a bit wonderful. "Is that so? Let me have a look at the mixed soap and bring me a basin of water." "Yes, Sir Lord." Burnell quickly dispatched an apprentice to bring out a plate of light pink mixed soap. The soap was kneaded into a flat oval shape, a total of 3 pieces, and looked a bit rough. Another apprentice came over with a basin of water. List dipped his hand in the water, then applied the mixed soap and rubbed it. Suddenly a lot of foam appeared. The mixed soap in his hand was very smooth, and its decontamination ability felt very good. Especially after washing, his hand felt very clean and had a faint fragrance. Although this was not a soap he had seen, the effect was close to what he remembered. What is the cost of making it and what is the ratio of soap to soap? List asked. Probably one piece of soap can be mixed with 3 soaps to make 4 mixed soaps. But I think it may be more economical to grind the pods of the acacia tree directly into soap powder. About 1 mixed soap can reduce the cost to 40 copper coins. The cost of the soap is 1 silver coin, right? It's more than a silver coin. The soap powder I bought is too expensive. The cheapest soap cost 2 silver coins each, which was 200 copper coins. The soap powder cost 1 silver coin, and the total cost was at least 110 copper coins. If the cost of the mixed soap was reduced to 40 copper coins, it could be sold at the price of 2 silver coins, which would beat the soap on the market. Even if the soap powder was not used. Buying the soap directly and making it into a mixed soap, raising the cost to 1 silver coin was still profitable. Burnell, you did a good job. The mixed soap is better than I thought. In the future you can slowly study the soap. The workshop will immediately start making the mixed soap. I have to give it a nice name. Do you have any suggestions? List was full of confidence in the mixed soap. The feel and the decontamination effect during washing were a grade higher than that of the soap. If a picky person like him thought it was good, the other nobles would definitely slap the table and applaud. The nobles were very willing to spend money on items that improved the quality of life. Sir Lord, under your guidance I was able to develop the mixed soap. You should give it a name. Burnell said respectfully. As people get older they gradually become artistic in their speech. List was very satisfied with Burnell's reaction. Then let's call it Flower Soap. I will make it a specialty of Flower Town. Burnell and the apprentices around you, be sure to keep the formula of the flower soap strictly confidential. Please rest assured, Sir Lord. Do a good job. I have rewards for any invention that can bring benefits. Although the soap has not been developed, the flower soap is barely qualified. Burnell, reward you with 10 silver coins and your apprentices with 20 copper coins each. Thank you, Sir Lord. Burnell took the apprentices and thanked him. List was also very happy. The flower soap could not bring as much revenue as the seafood business, but it was still very sure that it could squeeze out the current soap market and even sell to the outer islands. Chapter 170. The soap workshop was about to bring in good profits. The peanut processing workshop was also about to bring in good profits. Among the newly purchased serfs, several cooks were arranged to study delicious peanuts. At present they had already developed peanut butter, peanut crisp, salt and pepper peanuts and fried peanuts. A small batch was handed over to the Thorns caravan for sale. The response was very good. Many aristocrats who tasted the delicious peanuts expressed that they would buy them in large quantities next time. The Flower Town's peanut production was insufficient, and there was also a shortage of workers. The head of the peanut processing workshop, the cook Lucas, had already entrusted the Thorns caravan to purchase peeled peanuts from the North Valley City. Well done. List only gave a verbal praise and then left. The peanut processing workshop was his idea. These people were just executors and had no creativity. He liked to use gold coins, silver coins and copper coins to encourage creativity, discovery and role models, rather than encouraging hard work, because the serfs were supposed to work hard in the first place. The last stop was the distillery. Frank Distillers brewed fruit wine, Berdang brewed rice wine and Huntella brewed beer. They were all making the best use of their time to brew wine as soon as possible to earn income for the distillery. However, no one in the distillery knew how to brew liquor and similarly no one knew how to brew wine. There was no difference between ordinary wine and fruit wine. However, fine wine required high craftsmanship, and the selection of grapes was very meticulous. Dry, semi-dry, sweet and semi-sweet varieties of wine had different techniques. On the Coral Island, only Tulip Castle had mastered the technique of brewing sweet wine. Crescent wine, sweet and cold, was famous in the Grand Duchy. The red wine from the Razy Manor cellar that List had drunk in the Longtaro Castle was the best among dry wines. These techniques were all secret techniques that were exclusively mastered by the greater aristocrats. The same was true for liquor. As a distilled liquor, the brewing process of liquor was more complicated and was monopolized by the greater aristocrats. Liquor such as gin might not even be available in ordinary times. Therefore, the Flower Town's distillery could only brew some simple fermented liquor. After inspecting the distillery, List began to ponder. If I remember correctly, distilled liquor has an additional process compared to fermented liquor. It seems that alcohol and water have different vaporization temperatures to purify alcohol. Repeated distillation can produce high spirits. Because he didn't like to drink, he didn't know much about wine. He had read a lot of novels in the past and most of them mentioned distilled spirits. It looked quite simple, so he had a vague impression of it. Perhaps I can let the winery study distillation technology. Maybe we can brew liquor and increase the specialty of Flower Town. Rice wine is made from fermented grains. Liquor was essentially brewed from grains. Liszt thought that if he further distilled the rice wine, would he be able to obtain white wine? So he called the 3 brewers over. I'll give you a mission. Remember, this mission is highly confidential. If anyone leaks it, their entire family will be whipped to death. The 3 brewers tensed up and replied, "We swear to keep the mission a secret." Very well, I got a formula. It is said that liquor is obtained through the distillation of rice wine. By heating the rice wine, turning it into steam, and then introducing the steam into other places to cool it down and turn it into water, the water in the rice wine can be removed. In the end, what is left is liquor. You should explore a few more times and strive to brew Flower Town's liquor. The 3 winemakers were confused by his words. But he still simply replied, "Please rest assured, Sir Lord. We will brew the liquor as soon as possible." The task was assigned. Liszt felt that another specialty of Flower Town was waving to him. He even thought of a name at this moment. It's called flower wine. Well, it's graded. Flower wine with low degrees can be called 5 years of aging. Flower wine with high degrees can be called 10 years of aging, 20 years of aging, and even 100 years of aging or 500 years of aging. Suddenly, it occurred to him that the Grand Duchy of Sapphire only had a history of more than 150 years. Before that, there were only monkeys on the island. Forget about 500 years of aging. Let's just say that in the year of the founding of the country, a winemaker came to Coral Island and personally brewed a jar of wine. There's only 1 jar, but we can make 1 jar every year. Just like an 82-year-old Lafite, no matter how many years we drink it, we can never finish it. Thinking of liquor sales, many classic cases immediately popped up in his mind. But he also discovered the risks. Liquor is a profiteering industry. Without a strong backing, it is difficult to guarantee. I must cooperate with Tulip Castle. With the banner of Tulip Castle, business would be good. As an Earl of the Grand Duke, Lee William Tulip was definitely one of the top figures in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. Moreover, he also served as the Grand Duke's groom and would have close contact with the Grand Duke every year. If he wanted to pull the banner, he must share the profits with Tulip Castle. Liszt in mind. The more he integrated into the world, the more he knew the importance of aristocratic connections. Levis, Olvera, and even Lytton, no matter how scheming they were still relatives. They were people who could help in times of crisis. The Viscount of the small Kerchief Island was destroyed. The Viscount of the big Kerchief Island, which had been separated, was still running around, investigating and urging the Grand Duke to find the murderer. Liszt certainly hoped that the Tulip family could grow and become a towering tree that could shelter them from the wind and rain. Black Dragon walked steadily with almost no rise and fall. Liszt was able to think very well on horseback. His thoughts jumped around and then he thought of the distribution of profits. Then he thought of another idea. Speaking of monkeys, maybe I can promote the monkey wine? The existence of the monkey wine was not important. What was important was the gimmick. Aristocrats liked to be extravagant. Extravagance did not only include wearing gold and silver, gems and famous horses, but also included the arts and the pursuit of rare things. Monkey wine was obviously a rare thing. However, aristocrats with deep foundations are too few. They are all nouveau riche who have been rich for 3 or 4 generations. Including the Tulip family, they have only made their fortune in recent generations. They might not necessarily have much interest in things like monkey wine. They should be more interested in gems and gold coins. In any case, when selling the fruit wine, he could first hype it up. Subsequently, Liszt inspected several other shops and workshops. At present, in the Flower Town, there were only 3 shops in the commercial district: a bakery, a grocery store, and a barber shop. In the workshop district, there were only a blacksmith shop, a leathersmith shop, a locksmith shop, and a tailor shop, as well as the newly built winemaking workshop, soap workshop, and peanut processing workshop. Many of the wooden houses that had been built were empty. If it were not for the many serfs paving roads, building houses, and planting grass, the Flower Town would look like a ghost village. 476 serfs joined and were assigned to the various settlements to farm. They did not cause much of a stir. Most of the more than 100 craftsmen who had high hopes were workers who did not have the ability to support a shop or workshop independently. For the time being, they could only follow along in farming and waste their skills. In the short term, the commercial district can only be used as a trading market to receive occasional caravans. He looked at the empty houses and sighed with emotion. First, the workshop area has to be vigorously developed into a production and processing center. Only then can the development of the commercial district be driven. Liszt pointed to the commercial district. He wanted to gesture, how to build here, and how to build here, but when he turned his head, he saw only the serving man Thomas and a few retainer knight following behind him. They were all vulgar people. For a moment, his ambition to achieve great things was stifled. Chapter 171. Secretary. Liszt was very disappointed. He did not have a secretary. There was no way to realize the shameless and impatient life of the rich and powerful, where the secretary would do whatever she wanted, and the secretary would do whatever she wanted when she had nothing to do. In fact, he did not even have a personal maid. The social system of monogamy was strictly enforced. Even if the aristocrats had lovers everywhere and illegitimate children, they still followed this system. This was not the official system. This was the custom of society. In order to ensure the continuation of monogamy, female aristocrats could only have a personal maid, and male aristocrats could only have a personal male servant. This was to prevent the destruction of monogamy in the name of a personal servant. He had investigated the formation of this custom and finally speculated that it probably originated from the queen system of the Moon Empire. This long-disappeared empire was like the ancient Roman Empire in Europe. Although the Roman Empire was destroyed by the barbarians, its cultural system deeply influenced the entire European continent. The same was true for the Moon Empire. As the strongest empire at that time, its cultural influence still existed. At present, most countries had more or less absorbed the language of the moon. Including the hierarchy of knight, the relationship between lord and vassal, all originated from the Moon Empire. The queen system was also preserved. In many countries there were once women who were kings. The Grand Duchy of Sapphire did not have a queen, but the monogamy system was inherited. The Moon Empire. I wonder what the situation is like. As the lord of a small town, Liszt had more leisure time. He liked to read night novels and heard about the Moon Empire countless times. The knight would always find the ruins of the Moon Empire in a certain place and obtain treasures. They would immediately become powerful and fight against the heavens and the earth. Because there was no habit of recording history. Most of the information about the Moon Empire was passed down by word of mouth. This kind of information transmission was distorted as high as 99%. Therefore, the Moon Empire became a legendary empire, countless, beautiful and incomparably prosperous. Just like the ancient Greece of the Europeans and the ancient kings of Confucius, all kinds of beautification and all kinds of embellishments replaced the truth and became the official history in people's minds. It's annoying not to have history books. I'm really afraid that I will read too many night novels and take the nonsense as a messenger. Liszt shook his head. He did not want to think about these nonsense things anymore. Other than satisfying his curiosity, he studied history because he wanted to learn about politics and tactics through history. He wanted to talk about the general trend of the world. But he decided not to bother with the nonsense of history. He returned to the regret of not having a secretary. He felt that he had to speed up the training of a group of female retainer knight to be his personal bodyguards. Otherwise, there would be no atmosphere and passion when he gave speeches and gave pointers. After inspecting the town's buildings, Zhang Xian returned to the castle. He went straight to the study, took out a thick bast paper and a quill, and prepared to sort out his plans for the flower town. If the flower town is to be built into an economy that mainly focuses on the primary processing of agricultural products, then the current layout of the town will have to be replanned and the trade routes will have to be modified. Land transportation conditions are far inferior to sea transportation. Sailing directly from the sea to Coral City would save more transportation capacity. He first drew a rough map of the Coral Island. In the study of the Count in Tulip Castle, a map of the Coral Island was hung on the wall. The whole island was in the shape of a distorted 8. The northeast corner was the flower town. The narrow part in the middle of the 8 was the deep water port. The Coral City was built next to the deep water port. Limited by the terrain, it was impossible to travel in a straight line from the flower town to the Coral City. In the middle, one would have to pass through the North Valley City and the Yulin City in the shape of a Z, which would waste a lot of time. The geographical location of the flower town is remote. The wharf must be built quickly and the sea can be opened. Land transportation can be supplemented by building a checkpoint at the entrance to the Thorns Ridge. In this way, the flower town's main area will be divided into 3 parts: the wharf, the town, and the Thorns Ridge, which will respectively undertake trade and processing tasks. He rode a few serpentines in the workshop area of the town. They were all workshops planned to be built: sugar workshop, spice workshop, textile workshop, leather workshop, paper workshop, tofu workshop, tulip workshop, as well as shoe shops, bone shops, and so on. At the wharf, he also wrote the planned workshops: brick factory, cement factory, pottery kiln factory, salt factory, glass workshop, and so on. Near the Thorns Ridge checkpoint, there were also planned workshops: carpentry workshop, slaughterhouse, horse market, and so on. Some of these workshops did not have enough craftsmen to support them, and some had technology to be developed. But in List's vision, these should be achievable through hard work. But soon, he lost interest in writing again. Costo has reported that the flowers are ready to go to sea at any time. Now we only need to wait for Glanny to build the calm pearl, and then we can explore Black Horse Island. Once Black Horse Island was seized, his future strategy would focus on Black Horse Island. The importance of Flower Town would undoubtedly drop a lot. Especially when he achieved military merits and turned Black Horse Island into his own fief, he would definitely hand it over to Flower Town. Just like the Tulip family gave up their original fief and moved to the Coral Island, taking root in the new territory. When I have enough financial and material resources to solve the technical problems of paper, cement, tofu, glass, and so on, I am afraid I will already be a Viscount of Black Horse Island. Thorn sprites could be born at any time. Once there were sprites, they could generate a steady stream of financial resources. It would not be difficult to arm a knight squad. At that time, it would not be difficult to charge on the battlefield and make contributions. The Grass family and the Gravel family were awarded the title of Viscount by virtue of their respective sprites. As the son of the Count, as long as he made contributions, there was no reason for the Count not to grant his son the title of Viscount. At that time, Black Horse Island could be designated as his own fief. The aristocrats could exchange credit for deserted islands. In case of great contributions on the battlefield, it would not be impossible for the Grand Duke to directly infeoff the island. Becoming a direct vassal of the Grand Duke was more dazzling than being a marquis or an earl's vassal, and his promotion in the future would be faster. Rulers always like to promote new aristocrats to check and balance the old aristocrats. But once I become a vassal of the Grand Duke, I will have to be independent from the Tulip family. Will I be the Viscount of Black Horse Island, List Thorn? Of course, this possibility was relatively small. He was just a baron. How much contribution could he make to be valued by the Grand Duke? Moreover, he was a vassal of the Count. The Grand Duke generally would not cross the line and win over the vassals of his subordinates. In particular, the Count had a good relationship with the Grand Duke, so he would not be casually roped in. Anyway, Black Horse Island is mine. The Black Dragon horse herd must not be touched by anyone. If he wanted Black Horse Island, he had to make contributions and get the title. List put down his quill and looked out of the window. In the distance, several horses were leisurely eating grass. People will die on the battlefield. At that time, I will see if I can find the same position as Levis, act as a liaison, do logistics, and get some merit. He paused. He calmly said to himself, but the knight squad must be trained as soon as possible, my own chi cultivation must also be accelerated, and Dosun's training must also be strengthened. Chapter 172. When he first came to this world, List felt that he had to keep a low profile and settle down as a baron in the countryside. With the improvement of the quality of life, the class position has rebelled. He began to cluster around the aristocratic knight system, but he was unwilling to go to the battlefield and just wanted to develop. Now Flower Town has been developing at a high speed, and the Thorn Sprite is about to be born. His thoughts have changed again. The impulse for glory and the desire for his own island have deepened step by step. The idea of not going to the battlefield has also been replaced by going to the battlefield, doing logistics and getting achievements. He became like a real aristocrat. He was swallowed up by the world, or rather he actively integrated into the world, into the knight system. Some people are proletarian fighters who have devoted their lives to the liberation of all mankind. I admire such people, but I will never imitate them. List's mind is still clear. Integrating into the world is not passive, but the result of his initiative. My goal in life is to ride a dragon, to become my own master. He wants to be a king, not a vassal. With the existence of smoke missions, modern knowledge in his mind, and the social system still exists. This gives him enough confidence to achieve the big goal of life. Walking to the window, Blessed Curls, who liked to squawk on the windowsill, was no longer there. There was a flash of nostalgia in his eyes, but it was gone in an instant. Then he looked into the distance. Just as Blessed Curls does not want to be a pet, he does not want to be a servant even to the king. He can accept being corrupted by aristocratic life, but he does not allow his knees to kneel to anyone except his parents. The road is tortuous, but the future is bright. First, set a small goal for myself to find a secretary. No, to become a viscount. The knight system of this world has a medieval style, the core of which revolves around lords, vassals, and land. Although social customs, cultural production, and the European Middle Ages on Earth, there is a huge gap. Productivity revolves around dragons and sprites, which is also different from Earth's productivity. But in essence, it is a form of feudal serfdom in the European Middle Ages. It was an economic system established by feudal lords in their territories to exploit and enslave serfs, and it was a very cruel exploitation. Serfs and free people had almost no means of production, because the real means of production were dragons and elves, but both of them were firmly monopolized by the nobles. This kind of system was very exploitative. However, compared to the dark Middle Ages established by the barbarians on the corpse of the Roman Empire and the serfdom of Western Tibet with the legend of Sister Drum, the feudal serfdom of this world was much milder. At least the serfs and commoners still had a way to rise. Combat aura was like the ancient imperial examinations in China. Most people couldn't afford to take the imperial examinations, but there were always a few commoners who could change their fate by taking the imperial examinations. Most people in this world didn't have enough to eat and didn't have the extra nutrients to train in combat aura. However, there would always be lords who would choose commoners with good physical qualities to train. With battle aura and several generations of accumulation, it was not difficult to cultivate an Earth Knight. After a few more generations of hard work and more opportunities, they would be able to fight for the position of nobility. The Tulip family followed this path of prosperity. Judging from their surnames, the ancestors with the surname Tile were probably either freemen or serfs. In any case, they had nothing to do with nobles. His great-great-grandfather was born with divine strength. He was selected by the aristocracy and trained as a retainer knight, serving the newly founded Sapphire family. After several meritorious deeds and several wars, he was conferred the title of Lord Knight, which allowed him to enter the aristocratic class. Since then, there were several more generations of hard work. In the generation of his great-grandfather, he became a baron. In the generation of his great-grandfather, he became a viscount, and finally, in the generation of Lee William, he became a count of the Sapphire Grand Duke. The surname was also changed to the noble Tulip. However, it is said that it depends on the accumulation of generations, but in essence, it still depends on mutation. The so-called rich rely on technology, the poor rely on mutation. The mysterious existence of battle aura needs the accumulation of nutrients. If you want to become stronger without nutrients, you can only rely on physical mutation. For example, the Tulip family's great-great-grandfather was born with divine strength, which is a kind of mutation, probably because of his greater strength, which was far-fetched by later generations. Now I no longer need to rely on mutation, I can rely directly on technology. Technology is nutrition and technology is magic. Arriving at the flame mushroom processing workshop, List saw the magician smoking. "Mr. Elkson, has my flame mushroom magic potion been made?" "Sorry, not yet, but I will be able to finish them soon. It won't take long," Elkson replied. Smoking leisurely instead of working made List a little dissatisfied, but he did not show it. "Is there a finished magic potion? Give it to me first." "Yes." He quickly brought out a large box, and inside the box was a magic potion wrapped in strips of cloth. List opened the cloth strip of a magic potion, revealing a thumb-long, pinky-thin crystal tube, which contained a light red viscous liquid. Such a small one can be sold for at least 1 gold coin. "Baron List, you can taste its effect." Although I am not the magician designated by Tulip Castle to make magic potions, I am still confident in my skills. Elkson flicked his cigarette ash and said proudly. List nodded. Opening the cork of the crystal tube, he used the magic eye to observe for a moment, then looked up and drank the magic potion inside. The potion, like jelly, poured directly into his mouth without a drop left. It melted in his mouth. Immediately after, he felt a flame-like magic rising from his stomach, rushing to his limbs and bones. The whole process lasted for 3 minutes before it gradually calmed down. List's eyes lit up, and he felt that his total amount of chi, which had not been improved for a long time, had soared a lot. He couldn't help but exclaim, "Very enjoyable. I'm glad you are satisfied. Mr. Elkson, then I will not disturb your work. If you need anything, just say it and I will try my best to meet it." List finished, took a box of magic potions and returned to the castle. From today on, the road to the potion pot officially opened. One day later, Marcus, who had been on a business trip for several days, finally returned to Flower Town. He brought the news that Liszt was most concerned about. "My lord, fortunately I did not fail. How is it, where are the new varieties of thorns? I have contacted Tulip Castle and Gravel Castle, but no new varieties of thorns have been found. Only Beer Castle on Beer Island has a new variety of thorns. Viscount Trick said that he welcomes you to Beer Castle at any time, and Sir Aubrey asked me to bring you a letter." Aubrey is Trick's son and the heir to Beer Castle. He has a good relationship with Liszt because of the seafood business. Hearing that there was a new variety of thorns on Beer Island, Liszt breathed a long sigh of relief. "So, I need to take the thorns worm to Beer Island." Marcus replied, "Of course you can go, but you can also not go. I have brought back the new variety of thorns, which can be planted directly in Flower Town." Liszt was very pleased with such a thoughtful move. This is a qualified subordinate who knows how to share the worries of his leader. "Is that so? Hurry up and plant it. The thorns worm is almost halfway through the pupa period, and it urgently needs to be assimilated." After a while. Chapter 173. The fat pupa stage of the thorn sprite was already 3 times the size of other sprite worms. Its originally glossy skin gradually dimmed as if it had aged. This was indeed the case. The fat pupa stage meant evolution, but it also meant death. In a short 1 or 2 months, if it couldn't break through its own shackles and evolve into a sprite, it would exhaust its remaining life force and turn into ashes. It has sensed the pheromone of the new species of thorns. Liszt held up the thorn worm in the jade box. Their minds were connected, so he could deeply feel the thorn worm's emotions at the moment. It was a complex emotion full of excitement, apprehension, fear, and courage. Ordinary sprite worms would never have so many emotions. Only by evolving could they grow. The new species of thorns was just a thorns with a change in the color of its leaves. It was not much different from ordinary thorns. No matter what. When the thorns worm landed on the branches of the thorns, its already slow movement suddenly sped up, climbing along the branches of the thorns. It had no legs, only tiny fleshy protrusions, but no matter how it climbed up the tree trunk, it would not fall off. This kind of magical creature could ignore the laws of physics and crawl in the air. In particular, if it wanted to climb from one bramble to another, it didn't need to land on the ground. It could just wriggle in the air and easily cross the gap between 2 brambles to collect the pheromones of the next bramble. Marcus, who had arranged for the Squire Knight to stand guard and patrol the area, hurried over. He looked at the thorns worm and was equally perturbed. "My lord, can the thorns worm succeed?" "Of course." Liszt's mouth suddenly showed a beautiful arc, and his smile was as bright as the sun in March. "Don't be nervous, Mr. Marcus. The thorns worm has succeeded. I can feel the restlessness in its body. It's a new power, it's evolving." In fact, he could not feel it at all. The reason why he was so sure was because of the smoke mission that appeared in front of him. Quest completed. Reward, 1 thorn sprite. Because of Marcus's interruption, the smoke serpentines quickly dissipated, as if nothing had ever appeared. Sometimes Liszt felt that there was no smoke at all. The reason why others could not see it was because of the projection of fate in his mind. Otherwise, the smoke dragon must have been to Earth. Otherwise, why would it appear in the form of a mission, and the content was also familiar to Liszt? Just like how the invisible dragon couldn't be seen, only upright and courageous people could see it. The smoke form of the smoke dragon was probably the same as that of the invisible dragon, a special existence that transcended magic power. The other fairy dragons, emerald dragons and yellowish dragons probably all existed in some special form. This also explained why the holy dragon was only a legend. People could not see what they really looked like. Even ordinary tri-elemental dragons and elves. It was also a special existence. At this time, the thorns worm's skin turned gray at a speed visible to the naked eye, and its luster completely dissipated. The originally tight skin was also covered with wrinkles, as if it had reached the end of its life. However, its emotions were extremely excited, and it had an indescribable joy and happiness. Using magic eyes, Liszt could see that the chaos magic in its body was constantly producing bubbles like boiling water. Then the bubbles burst and some kind of invisible change was born. It seemed to be blown up by the boiling magic bubbles, and the thorns worm's body was still growing. The bigger its body was, the more decayed and old it looked. The more excited it was, the more agitated it became. Liszt was also excited and he wanted to sing a song. Marcus, who was next to him, could not feel this excitement, but he saw the thorn's worm grow like a balloon. His eyes were bright, his fists were clenched tightly, and he was sweating for the evolution of the thorn's worm. Time seemed to go on forever. But the wind only blew a few times on List's forehead and his pale blonde hair, and the thorn's worm had swelled into a big gray worm as thick as a calf. The setting sun dyed the burning clouds on the horizon red. In the distance, Dosun's bark was heard, followed by Stupid Woman in the dog prison, who responded with a bark. The castle was bathed in the afterglow of the setting sun, as if plated with a layer of golden brilliance. It was impossible to distinguish the windows from the rock walls, only the outline of a steeple roof. The silence of the dusk was particularly clear at this moment. List continued to use magic eyes and stared at the thorn's worm. He had witnessed the birth of the sprite in Tulip Castle. But that memory was a long time ago and he was still a teenager, so it was not deep. Now, the clear process of the sprite worm evolving into a sprite appeared in his vision. Suddenly, List gently spat out 2 words, "It's coming." At that moment, only the sound of tearing paper could be heard. The gray skin of the thorn sprite worm split open, and then a small pink and white hand stretched out from under the skin of the thorn sprite worm. Then a palm-sized white elf directly burst out of the skin of the thorn sprite worm and jumped out. In the blink of an eye, the white sprite spread its translucent wings and flew into the air. Wow! Wow! The clear cry of a 3-year-old child rippled in the air, circling around List. The speed of its flight was not fast, but its posture was graceful and agile, and it somersaulted countless times. Wow! Wow! That kind of cheerful mood, even without telepathy, can be felt just by listening to its cry. List's eyes were firmly locked on the figure of the thorn sprite, and a warm smile filled the corners of his mouth. He finally had a contract with himself, a sprite that was connected by blood and mind. He did not disturb the thorn sprite's catharsis. He felt the joy of the little fellow's successful evolution. List moved his eyes to the ground, squatted down, and gently touched the skin with his hand. The shed skin quickly turned into dust and dissipated with the breeze, leaving no trace. He didn't see clearly how the sprite worm evolved into a sprite under this skin. It was just magic boiling and then it transformed into a sprite. It was so crude and simple, unreasonable. When he came back to his senses, the thorn sprite had vented its emotions and landed on his shoulder, pulling his hair with one hand to stabilize its body. A pair of big eyes, with curiosity about the world, looked at List, who turned his head. Its eyes were big, different from human eyes, black and bright as if it was wearing contact lenses. Wow! Come here. List stretched out his hand, and the thorn sprite immediately climbed onto his hand, holding a finger. Looking carefully, one could see that on its head, there was a very small thorn growing on its round head. It was an ordinary thorn, which meant that it was a little sprite born from ordinary thorns. The little hands are fat and the little feet are fat. Very delicate. As if water could be squeezed out. His crotch was bare and there was no distinction between genders. "Teacher Marcus, how about my thorn sprite?" List smiled proudly. Marcus sincerely praised, "Beautiful." Chapter 174. The importance of sprites is self-evident. Even in Tulip Castle, harvesting a sprite is a festival worth celebrating. Therefore, after the birth of the thorn sprite, List quickly summoned Gort and other officials. The meeting was held in the castle. Wow! 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 The thorn sprite flying around in the living room undoubtedly attracted everyone's attention. It was very bold and not afraid of people at all. With List's connivance, it could not wait to turn the castle inside and out to check its home. And this little guy was quite fierce. Thomas, who was in front of the tea, blocked its way. The little guy immediately bared its teeth at Thomas and waved its palm, seemingly ready to slap him directly. Give Thomas a big slap. Although because Thomas dodged in time, the big slap did not happen, but it still held its head high and shouted in front of Thomas for a while. As if to say, "My territory, I am the master, despicable slave, open your dog eyes." In fact, it was almost the same. List could feel its thoughts. The thorn sprite was indeed expressing its dissatisfaction with Thomas. Because of its contract with List, it directly regarded the castle as its home. Except for List, everyone else was unwelcome. These unwelcome people without self-awareness were praising the thorn sprite in the living room. "It is as beautiful as the stars in the sky, I can't think of a better word to describe it." Gort danced. "Its arrival just proves what I said before, that Flower Town is not only a place blessed by the glory of the night, but also the birthplace of the glory of the night. It's not just a little elf, it's also a little elf that brings endless wealth. Fast-growing iron thorns, fast-growing magic thorns under its care, will become trees full of gold coins. Marcus's words were always crisp. The thorn sprite will carry the journey of Sir's glory. The praises were endless. The thorn sprite was indeed worthy of such praise. It could grow a kind of potion, a kind of wood, and its strategic value was almost as important as the sprites that grew food crops. He waved his hand. The thorny fairies flying all over the ground suddenly landed on List's shoulder and yawned. Well, they were probably tired of playing. List glanced at the sea of flattering followers and slowly said, "There will be plenty of time to praise you in the future. Right now, I want to know how to hold a celebration. Sir, please give me the task of hosting the celebration." "I'm the best at it," Gort said without hesitation. "Then tell me, how do you plan to celebrate?" "Every time the Tulip Castle obtains a lesser sprite, it will invite the following aristocrats to a banquet. As the Baron of the Flower Town and a descendant of the Tulip family, you can invite the aristocrats of the North Valley City to a banquet. At the same time, the relatives in the Tulip Castle, as well as Sir Baron of Falcon Town, should be invited." Gort first decided who to invite. Then he said, "In order to celebrate the Thorn Sprite, all the civilians in the territory should participate. I think there should be a day off." "Well, forget it, there shouldn't be a holiday. Now the autumn harvest is busy and there is a shortage of manpower for various projects. It is simply unforgivable to let the lazy serfs have a holiday." As a result, the civilians' holiday passed by in a flash. It would be good to celebrate while working. Blair heard this and added, "Perhaps we should give each serf a copper coin to show Sir Lord's care." "Is it really necessary to treat the serfs like this?" Gort disagreed. He had always looked down on the civilian class. List made the final decision. "It is decided that each serf will be given a copper coin and the freedmen will have a day off. As for you, on the day of the celebration your salary will be doubled." "Double the salary? Well, that's a good idea." Gort nodded and praised. "Thank you, sir, for your generosity." Carl, Rome, and the others quickly expressed their gratitude. They liked that the lord they followed was a generous lord. With a slight smile, List was satisfied with the reaction of his subordinates. He was not pretending to be generous by giving money away. The deeper meaning was that he was stimulating the circulation of goods in Flower Town through the distribution of money. As the modern soul of the 21st century, he more or less understood a lot about economic theory. After all, inflation can be felt every day: rising prices, depreciation of the RMB, and more wages, only to find that the distance from being able to afford a house is getting further and further away. It was also from these intuitive feelings that he slowly understood, cared about the country's economic policies, and knew what it meant to stimulate consumption. The purpose of stimulating consumption was not consumption, but demand. Once there was demand, it could drive the development of various industries. As the saying goes, money can only produce real value when it is in circulation. If List followed the example of other lords and hoarded all the gold coins in his own warehouse, then the territory would always be in the primitive farming stage. The subjects would not have enough to eat or starve to death, let alone buy goods or start a small business, do some sideline, and so on. With money in hand, there would be a desire to spend, and the territory would be revitalized. Eventually, the primitive farming stage would be transformed into a handicraft industry and a processing industry, which would bring a steady stream of wealth. There would definitely be negative effects. With money, the subjects would be itchy. They would not be so foolishly loyal. But List believed that as long as he firmly grasped the war machine, orders of chivalry, and regularly harvested a group of fat pigs that got rich first, the territory would not be able to make any waves. After all, this was a world ruled by personal strength. Wealth was only meaningful under the protection of strength. Consultant Gort, go on. "As you wish, sir." Gort restrained his excitement and made himself look like he did not love money so much. "The last and most important point of the celebration, sir, is that you should announce the recruitment of followers at the celebration." List raised his eyebrows and pondered, "Recruit followers?" "Yes, everyone knows the importance of the sprites to the aristocracy. Having the sprites means that Sir will go further and achieve more glory. This is a great time to recruit followers. There will always be people like me, like Marcus, like Blair, like Isaiah, who are willing to follow in your footsteps. Why celebrate the acquisition of the sprites? On the one hand, of course, it was to be happy. On the other hand, it was to show off, show the powerful strength of the Lord, and attract knight vassals. In this world, the aristocracy and the freedmen have cultivated many earth knights, but only a few can get fiefs and titles. The rest are tirelessly looking for opportunities to become aristocrats. I, who have the thorn sprite, am an opportunity for these earth knights. List instantly realized that with the birth of the thorn sprite, his momentum would inevitably rise. From a baron in the countryside to a viscount guarding a city in the future. Chapter 175. The Falcon Town was in the Birch City, not far from the Coral City. Olvera, dressed in military attire, was riding her fast horse on the lawn near the castle, drilling a team of young female retainer knight. In a flash, a knight rushed over. "Sir. What's the matter?" "The Flower Town has dispatched an emissary to the castle to convey the invitation of the Flower Town's baron." "Invitation?" Olvera's complexion fluctuated as she recalled the scene of her being humiliated by Dosen that day. "Let him wait, we will continue with the training." In front of the Falcon Town's castle, Xavier Cowdung waited quietly. He was not in a hurry. Before coming, the Sir Lord had told him that he might receive a cold reception in the Falcon Town. List was well aware of his sister's temperament. Therefore he just quietly brushed the hair of the horse he was riding. It was a young mare only 3 years old. It was not an excellent breed, just an ordinary horse that could not go on the battlefield. However, he loved the filly very much. For a knight, horses were more important companions than wives. Perhaps when he was promoted to an Earth Knight, the Sir Lord would reward him with a new horse that could go on the battlefield. However, he would never forget the filly that grew up together with him. Puff! The filly snorted. Xavier was a little worried. He touched the filly's belly to determine if it was pregnant. Just a few days ago, the Sir Lord's black dragon had raped the filly that was grazing on the pasture. He was very distressed for his filly, it was still just a child. However, Black Dragon's status in the Flower Town was comparable to that of an aristocrat. Only List had the right to stop it from doing what it wanted to do. Xavier could only stare helplessly as he watched Black Dragon rape the filly. "I hope you are not pregnant. You are still too young to give birth to a foal," Xavier said softly to himself. "Once the Sir Lord recruits me to the battlefield and obtains glory, I will buy you and raise you at home for my future son to ride." The average lifespan of an ordinary warhorse was 30 to 35 years. Unlike normal warhorses such as World of Warcraft stallions and dragon horses, they could live up to 60 or even 100 years old. The most suitable age for a normal warhorse to ride and charge was from 5 to 15 years old, the golden decade. From now on he would be Old Ma. Xavier believed that his child would be born in the near future. He already had a beloved girl. When the child grew up and could ride a horse, this little mare would still be in her golden decade. She could definitely follow the child until the child went to the battlefield and changed horses. Thinking of this, Xavier was full of energy. He firmly believed that under the leadership of the Sir Lord, he had a bright future to look forward to. The Flower Town was the birthplace of the knight's glory, and the Sir Lord was the son of glory. The retainer knight who delivered the message just now looked at me and my horse with disdain in his eyes. I knew that he rode a fine horse and that Falcon Town was a wealthy town, but he knew nothing about Flower Town. The town is just the starting point of the Sir Lord's journey. He will have a city. Xavier looked at the line of knight who came unhurriedly from the distance and guessed that it should be the Sir Lord's sister, Olvera Tulip, and her retainer knight. Falcon Town had a tulip sprite, and Flower Town also had a thorn sprite. After a while, the line of people had arrived in front of Xavier. The leader was a woman in military attire. Xavier immediately bowed and saluted. "Flower Town's messenger, Xavier, sends his greetings to Sir Baron. List sent you. What is he going to invite me for?" Olvera raised her head and looked disdainfully at Xavier. "I hope it is an important invitation. I am very busy and have no time to attend a boring party in the countryside." Xavier replied respectfully, "Sir Lord will hold a sprite birth celebration 2 days later on November 5th, to celebrate the birth of the contracted sprite." "Sprite birth celebration?" Olvera was stunned, her face changed dramatically and then repeated, "Sprite birth celebration, he has a sprite? How is that possible? He only has a few sprite worms, how can a sprite be born?" There was a strong suspicion in her tone, as well as jealousy that she herself was not aware of. "It is a thorn sprite worm that has evolved into a thorn sprite." "Thorn sprite?" Olvera's slightly distorted face calmed down a little. "It turns out that the thorn sprite worm has evolved. It is indeed necessary to hold a celebration. At least he can monopolize the hedging business of Coral Island. The sprite's thorns must be more suitable for hedges. Sir Baron, Flower Town has more than just thorns that can be used as hedges. Xavier remembered that the Sir Lord had instructed him to explain to Elvira that the Flower Town's thorns also had potions and ironwood. He couldn't help but say, there are also ironwood quality thorns and potion quality thorns, which are new varieties that have recently mutated. Ironwood. Potions. Hearing these two words, Elvira's face, which had just recovered, twisted again. She wanted to say, how is that possible? This series of blows was hard for her to accept. But she was, after all, a well-educated aristocrat. Her face flickered for a moment and she regained her composure. She replied in an indifferent tone, tell Levis that I will attend the Sprite birth celebration on time. Morris, you are responsible for receiving this night. After that, she went straight into the castle. She changed her clothes and drank a glass of milk, but she was still a little depressed. She sat in a chair and let her imagination run wild. When she was very young she hated Liszt, or rather she was jealous of him. He was so good-looking, was there any justice in the world? As Liszt's talent was left behind by her, she gradually felt balanced. As a woman who had been promoted to an Earth Knight before adulthood, she had enough confidence to face Liszt's handsomeness. However, all this changed after Liszt was enfeoffed. First, Liszt was promoted to an Earth Knight. It was a little late, but not by much. At least it was much earlier than many people, including the Count, expected. Next he found the Black Tulip magic potion, a peanut sprite worm, a handsome horse and a flying dust dog pup. Her luck was simply explosive. The most important thing was that Liszt began to respond to her with an equal gaze. Vaguely, this gaze even had the meaning of a father looking at a good-for-nothing son. This made Elvira very uncomfortable. She always wanted to teach Liszt a lesson, and as a result she was humiliated by Dosun's attack. The strength that she was proud of was no longer in Liszt's eyes. A man relying on the dog's power. She gritted her teeth and cursed. But she had to admit that she could no longer get along with Liszt the way she used to. Now Liszt had a thorn sprite which was equivalent to a viscount. Although she also had a sprite, the possibility of a woman going to the battlefield was very low. In this life it was probably barren. Fortunately it's Liszt, not Lytton. Rubbing her face, Elvira took a deep breath, and the expression on her face finally returned to normal. She turned and shouted, Mrs. Phoebe. Miss, I'm here. Prepare a gift for me. I want to give it to Liszt at the celebration in 2 days. Mrs. Phoebe asked, what specifications are you preparing? With the specifications for Levis's birthday. Chapter 176. Outside Coral City in an independent castle. Madam, you look even younger than the last time I saw you. Gort praised exaggeratedly. Madame Penelope replied happily, no, I am old. I can hear Greg calling me from another world. I want to revisit Tahiti with him. Greg Tiles, the Count's father, Liszt's grandfather, Tahiti's Viscount. In his hands, the family had its first tulip lesser sprite and began to collect different kinds of tulip, thus cultivating even more tulip sprites. The greater sprite Fragrant Fragrance was later cultivated, thus founding the Coral Islands tulip family. But in the end, Greg died on the battlefield. The tulip lesser sprite that he had contracted had also died. Fortunately, he only contracted that tulip lesser sprite as a souvenir. The other sprites were transferred to the adult Lee William, thus allowing the tulip family to survive. Just like now, Lee William had already transferred the sprites to Levis, while he himself was ready to sacrifice himself on the battlefield. As a future count, Levis's participation on the battlefield was like gilding the plate. An aristocratic heir had to prove to the world that he was qualified to inherit the title. Otherwise, following a lord who could not see the light, the followers who thirsted for aristocratic glory were likely to lose their morale. As a member of the tulip family and the contractor of all the elves, his safety was definitely a priority. Because once he died, the sprites and their worm stalks would also die. Even if they were lucky enough to survive, their vitality would be greatly damaged. Similarly, sprites could not repeatedly terminate their contracts and transfer them to others. Otherwise, their vitality would also be greatly damaged. A sprite worm could only terminate its contract once in its lifetime. In other words, it could only contract with 2 people. A lesser sprite could only terminate its contract 3 times in its lifetime. In other words, it could only contract with 4 people. A greater sprite could only terminate its contract 7 times in its lifetime. In other words, it could only contract with 8 people. A dragon sprite. This information was not known to ordinary people, as it was monopolized by greater aristocrats. Sprite worms had a lifespan of 10 years, which was very suitable for being infeft to their followers. Due to the increase in frequency, little sprites and big sprites were very suitable to be passed down in the family. However, they also had to save on contracts. Usually, the heirs would come of age and get their father's approval before they could pass it on. Madame Penelope mentioned Greg, but Gort had never seen him before. But he still went along with the topic and said, "I believe that although the old master misses you in the other world, he definitely hopes that you will continue to take care of the Tulip family's bloodline here and let it grow strong and healthy." Speaking like this, the old lady was very happy. "Yes, I must refuse him. I want to see the Count's 4 children grow up healthily. They are a group of worrying young people. In fact, you are too concerned about them, which is why you feel that they need to be worried. As members of the Tulip family's bloodline, every one of them is the cream of the crop among their peers." Gort flattered him as if he didn't need money. "The same goes for Baron List, whom I follow. The glory of the night always watches over him." Madame Penelope sighed with emotion. "List is indeed a lucky young man. He has grown up. Lucky is not enough to describe Sir Baron. He has inherited Sir Count's excellent qualities and is destined to be an excellent and great lord. I came to see you today because Sir Baron entrusted me to invite you to the Flower Town Sprite birth celebration to be held the day after tomorrow." Sprite birth celebration? Yes, a sprite. It is a thorn sprite that has evolved into a thorn sprite. It not only brings joy but also endless wealth. We have the magic ingredient thorns and ironwood thorns. If you see it with your own eyes, you will definitely like this sprite. Its beauty can dazzle the eyes. Madame Penelope, who had experienced many ups and downs, was still shocked by this news. "Is this true, Gort? List has his own sprite and one that can cultivate magic ingredients in ironwood?" "It's true. What a pleasant surprise. He is indeed a boy of the Tulip family." Madame Penelope laughed. "I'm starting to like Melissa a little. Her child has never let me down. Madame Melissa has brought the glory of the Taro family to Coral Island. Sir Baron has gathered the glory of 2 aristocratic families." Gort was very good at the art of flattery. Besides, when dealing with an old lady, it was enough to just praise her grandchildren. After chatting for half an hour, Gort took his leave. His next stop was Tulip Castle. Here, his art of flattery did not get a chance to be displayed. After handing over List's invitation to Madame Marie, he simply asked for the reason. The temporary owner of Tulip Castle smiled and saw him off. There was no way to judge how she thought after hearing the news. "No wonder she is the Countess. This bearing is hard for me to guess. The task given to me by List cannot be completed." Gort shook his head and left Tulip Castle. List told him to take a good look at Madame Marie's expression after delivering the news. Gort understood what List wanted. However, the result was disappointing. Madame Marie did not show any surprise, shock, jealousy, or anger. Fortunately, this task was just List's bad taste. It was not mandatory. After a moment, he appeared at the home of Levis's tutor, Frank. Both were tutors and were not unfamiliar with each other. However, in the past, Gort's status was much lower. He was just a tutor for the Baron in the countryside, while Frank was the tutor for the future Count. But now it was different. After explaining the purpose of his visit, he felt that Frank finally looked at him seriously, and his words were much more polite. "Advisor Gort, please convey my greetings to Baron List. On November 5th, I will take my wife and Shirley to the Flower Town Sprite birth celebration. Of course, on behalf of Sir Baron, I would like to express my gratitude for your coming. Then this noon have a simple meal here. We haven't had a drink together for many years. I have a bottle of gin that I have treasured for many years." Tulip Castle did not have a free meal. Gort had planned to eat here, so he did not refuse. "Wow, gin, although I am in a hurry to go back and invite other aristocrats to the celebration. But my legs probably can't walk at the moment. Thank you for your hospitality, Mr. Frank." At lunch, the Frank family and Gort sat as guests and hosts. At the table, the beautiful girl Shirley asked questions about List from time to time. "Uncle Gort, did Baron List give the thorn sprite a name?" "It seems that not yet. Maybe at the celebration he will announce the name of the thorn sprite." "Can the Wind Peregrine Falcon he raised fly now?" "Sorry, the Wind Peregrine Falcon has returned to the blue sky. Sir Baron is not willing to bind its proud heart." Frank's wife was surprised. "A World of Warcraft, just let it go? Isn't it too wasteful? It's worth a lot of gold coins." Chapter 177. November 5th. It was a cloudy day with a bit of a chill after autumn. Flower Town's autumn harvest has been completed. This year, with the improvement of sprite worms, the wheat harvest was quite abundant, 50% more than in previous years. The farmers in the wheat settlement had bright smiles on their faces. Taxes were reduced, harvests were increased, and there was a lot of food in store. There was no need to worry about starvation this winter. The farmers who planted oats and naked wheat were also very happy. They used manure, pond mud, plant ash and other fertilizers, and the output was also increased by 10% or 20% than in previous years. Today the town serfs were still working, but they all had happy smiles on their faces. Today was the celebration of the great Sir Lord's victory over the Thorn Sprite. Everyone supported and loved the bloodline of the Tulip family, because under his leadership, Flower Town had beautiful expectations for the first time. Moreover, there was also a festival benefit of a copper coin. Praise the Sir Lord, praise the Thorn Sprite, Flower Town will be better tomorrow. With the Thorn Sprite, Sir Lord will win more glory, and the glory of the knight will bless Flower Town. My nephew Philip, who is already a retainer knight of Sir Lord, will follow Sir Lord and get a lot of glory. Will Philip become an Earth Knight? Definitely. That's not necessarily true. He is just a serf, and the Earth Knight is an extravagant hope for him. Bob, you are jealous your son was eliminated, you are jealous of Philip. Philip and Xavier have won the favor of Sir Lord, and their future is bright. Quarreling proved that the serfs were not busy enough, and there was room for further exploitation. At this time, the servants in the castle were too busy to talk. Butler Carter's forehead was sweating, and he wiped it over and over again with a handkerchief. After successfully holding the Sea Festival banquet, he was a butler who had seen big scenes, but he was still nervous. Today there was no count bringing food from Tulip Castle. The ingredients for the banquet had to be prepared by the castle itself. For this reason he had been purchasing ingredients 2 days ago, buying all the ingredients available in the North Valley City. List was never stingy with the castle's expenses. Carter had the confidence to rely on the castle's financial resources to hold the banquet. Mrs. Abby, make a wok for Lucas as soon as possible. He needs a wok for 2 dishes. Tom, leave the task of fetching water to Jim. Now bring Parker and John to mow the lawn at the castle gate. The guests will be arriving soon. Mrs. Morrison, I need your help. The layout of the restaurant is not up to standard. Master doesn't want us to use the black tulip logo, so the curtains have to be replaced with the red tulip logo brought from Tulip Castle. We and Tulip Castle are the same family. Jesse, where are you? I need you to go out and tell Renard from the bakery about the quantity and style of bread today. Here is the list I wrote. Give it to him. There will be a lot of guests coming today. Their horses will stop around here. Barton, you must make sure you take good care of them. The busy servants of the castle did not affect the owner of the castle, Baron List. He got up as usual and went to walk his dog. Blessed Curls had already flown away. His only pet was Dosen. He took a walking stick made of fast-growing iron thorns and strolled along Dosen Avenue. The tip of the walking stick pointed at both sides of Dosen Avenue, which was about to be completed. Dosen rockthorns. Poochie. A thick rockthorn broke through the ground. The walking stick pointed to the other side and another rockthorn appeared. He kept pointing and Dosen kept releasing rockthorns, almost instantaneously without the slightest pause. Soon, on both sides of Dosen Avenue, there were 2 rows of rockthorns like trees on the side of the road, one next to the other looking very beautiful. The important thing was that after the celebration, the workers would break the rockthorns and pave the road. Good morning, my lord. Gort was dressed in a festive outfit with a laffer, pleated collar, around his neck, making him look like a jar from the head down. Good morning, Advisor Gort. Your Dosen seems to have grown a little. It has not reached adulthood yet, and it seems that it will continue to grow. List patted Dosen on the shoulder. He was getting more and more satisfied with the flying dust dog. It was not easy for him to touch Dosen's head. List's own height, measured with a tape measure commonly used on the continent, was 1.85 meters. Dosen's length from head to tail was 4.26 meters. The shoulder height of its forelimbs was 1.41 meters and the height of its hind limbs was 1.25 meters. In its natural state, its head was 1.97 meters. Compared with the ordinary tigers on Coral Island, Dosen was clearly 3 times bigger. Ordinary humans weighed about 130 kilograms, while Coral Island's tigers weighed about 500 kilograms. Dosen's weight had reached 1,300 kilograms. In terms of canines, Trembling Woods was worthy of being called a giant. It will continue to grow. Heavens, will it become Coral Island's largest World of Warcraft? Gord's tone was pompous and he seemed very surprised. In fact, he was just playing along with List and showing off Dosen. Although he knew that the other party was flattering him, List was still willing to be fooled. Perhaps it is unlikely to become the largest World of Warcraft. After all, the Thundertusk boar's weight is several times that of Dosen. However, compared to the only purple sand crocodile, Dosen should have a 50-50 chance of fighting it. The purple sand crocodile had thick skin and a wealth of magical means. Dosen could only use rock thorns, but he was agile. Of course, they were all intermediate World of Warcraft. Without a real comparison, no one could guarantee which one was stronger. The right timing, the right place, and the right people would affect the outcome of the battle. The purple sand crocodile was just a stupid World of Warcraft, while Dosen had Flower Town as his backing. Gord exclaimed, "To be able to fight the purple sand crocodile is already a remarkable achievement." Sir Count was unable to kill the purple sand crocodile. Of course, Sir Count does not attach much importance to the purple sand crocodile, but it is enough to show the horror of intermediate World of Warcraft. Dosen will be Flower Town's strongest guardian. His appetite is quite big. List complained with a smile. In the past, Dosen's one meal was equivalent to his 7 meals. Now, Dosen's one meal was equivalent to his 7 days of meals. The key was that Dosen was very picky about food. He refused to eat ordinary meals. He had to eat chicken, fish, and eggs. Occasionally he would eat tomatoes and wild fruits to supplement his vitamins. If it were a countryside aristocrat, they simply could not afford to raise Dosen. Even List was a little regretful. "I shouldn't have cut down the Thorns Ridges forest. I should have used it as Dosen's canteen to preserve the beasts in World of Warcraft." This was just a happy annoyance. After a while, Isaiah, Blair, Marcus, and the others arrived at the castle one after another. Everyone had changed into festive costumes. Frack Abbey. Even the 2 wizards had changed into tuxedos and rushed to the celebration. List took a bath and changed into his own Frack Abbey. Aristocratic costumes were very cumbersome. Under Thomas's service, it took him a quarter of an hour to put on the clothes neatly. He felt his body was a little tight. Fortunately, the weather had turned cold and he did not feel stuffy. "Master, Frack Abbey was naturally designed for aristocrats like you. It sets off your nobility and extraordinariness." Thomas praised sincerely. This was indeed the case. When the nobles of North Valley City arrived one by one, List stood in the middle of the crowd of nobles. They were all Frack Abbyer. No matter how one looked at it, List had the effect of being the focus of attention. He had a handsome appearance, a tall and straight figure, a noble temperament, and a faint and gentle smile. Chapter 178. The sun was gradually approaching noon. On the lawn in front of the castle, carriages were parked one after another, as well as a large number of horses. Gort, as a greeter, warmly chatted with every aristocrat participating in the ceremony at the castle gate. Only important guests would be personally greeted by List. For example, his grandmother, Lady Penelope. "Grandmother, you've had a hard journey. I'm sorry to have made you come from so far away." List and Lady Penelope gently hugged. Tulip Castle hasn't celebrated the birth of a sprite for several years, so of course I have to come. Lady Penelope's body was still strong, dressed in a black dress and a black hat. "It's just that the journey is too long, and the carriage is going to break my old bones." "How could that be? Your body is so strong that even riding a horse is no problem." List smiled and handed Lady Penelope's arm to Mrs. Morrison. "Help the old lady upstairs to rest and be careful of the stairs." "Master, please rest assured." Mrs. Morrison and Lady Penelope's attendant immediately helped the old lady upstairs to rest. List watched his grandmother enter the castle, then withdrew his gaze and looked at Elvira, who came with his grandmother. "Dear sister, long time no see. Thank you for coming." "It hasn't been a long time." Elvira was dressed in gorgeous aristocratic attire and wore heavy makeup. She looked more beautiful than usual. She looked at List with a complicated look in her eyes. Finally, she smiled warmly and said in the tone of a normal elder sister caring for her younger brother, "Congratulations on harvesting a sprite. It will bring you countless glory, but you also have to strive forward and don't let down the glory of the Tulip family's night." She was a little surprised. But List reacted quickly and responded with a gentle smile. "I understand. Glory should be obtained by charging on the battlefield. I believe that soon I will be like my father and brother on the battlefield." With that, he gently hugged Elvira. Then he walked into the castle with Elvira, talking and laughing. In the castle's living room, many nobles were already eagerly chatting. There were many nobles on the battlefield, so most of them were ladies of nobles. When they saw Elvira, it was natural for them to socialize happily. Liszt was a man of few words. Most of the time he was a quiet, pretty boy. But he was always the topic of conversation. It wasn't just because he was good-looking. Once on Coral Island he was a count's son hidden behind Levis, Lytton, and even behind Elvira. He was like a little transparent. However, in the past 6 months, even the most isolated nobles would often hear of Liszt's name, along with news about seafood, potions, World of Warcraft, and so on. Everyone knew that Liszt's rise could no longer be stopped. If he didn't build a good relationship now, when would he? It's a pity that my daughter is still too young. Otherwise, I would introduce her to Liszt today and let them have some sparks. A noble lady, looking at the quiet, picturesque Liszt with a fiery gaze, felt a surge of emotions. She wished she could replace her daughter and capture him first. Liszt felt the noble lady's gaze but did not respond. If he wanted to, he could probably pry off half of the nobles of Coral Island, or at least give the other party a hat. After exchanging pleasantries for half an hour, Gort welcomed new nobles. They were Frank and his wife, as well as a bright and beautiful girl. Mr. Frank, Madam, thank you for coming. Liszt stood up and greeted them with a smile, then his gaze fell on the girl. This is? Brother Liszt, I am Sully, little Sully. The girl's sweet smile instantly reminded Liszt that this was the little fat boy in the memory of his predecessor. A girl changes 18 times between childhood and womanhood. Sure enough, the little fat boy was now a slender and elegant girl. You've changed so much that I almost didn't recognize you. Little Sully, long time no see. Sully blinked her eyes and boldly asked, Then, do you think I've become more beautiful or ugly? Of course you've become more beautiful. Liszt responded to the girl with a slightly exaggerated tone of affirmation. The other party reminded him of the princess played by Elle Fanning in the movie, The Sleeping Spell. Even their hairstyles were very similar, except that Sully's hair was a bit more brown, while the princess' hair was a bit more golden. Such an occasion was not suitable for reminiscing about the past. After exchanging greetings, Sully followed her parents, sat down, and skillfully chatted with the surrounding nobles. Liszt joined in a few words and then had to go outside to greet the new guests. A team of knights escorted a gorgeous carriage with a red tulip flag. There was no doubt that Madame Marie and Lytton of Tulip Castle had arrived. The carriage arrived at the castle gate. Liszt walked out of the gate, a standard aristocratic smile hanging on his face. Thank you for coming, madam. This is a festival that belongs to you. If your father was not on the battlefield, he would have come to celebrate for you in person. Madame Marie also had a standard aristocratic smile. Lytton had grown a bit taller than the last time they met. Only he was as thin as a stick and had an ordinary appearance. In terms of appearance, the number of people on Coral Island that could match up to Liszt could be counted on one hand. He looked at Liszt with his acne-covered face. Big brother Liszt, where is your sprite? Sleeping. You will see it soon. I really envy Big Brother for having his own sprite and a thorny sprite at that. Did it evolve in the Thorns Ridge? I heard that the Thorns Ridge has a lot of thorns. Upon hearing Lytton's words, Liszt raised his eyebrows slightly. The annexation of the Thorns Ridge could barely be regarded as a stain on Liszt's record. After all, he had taken advantage of the Count. He didn't know if Lytton had mentioned the relationship between the Thorns Ridge and the thorny sprite unintentionally or intentionally, but it was best to cut off this association. He responded with a smile. It evolved in the meadow next to the castle. I got some new varieties of thorns from Beer Castle, which prompted the evolution of the thorn sprite. Liszt casually explained. He said, the guests are all here. Madam Lytton, please go to the second floor, the celebration banquet is about to begin. The dining hall on the second floor. The nobles gathered together and sat in the arranged seats according to their titles and statuses. They chatted happily while waiting for the wine and dishes to be served. As the banquet's host, Gort stood up and clapped his hands. When the noise gradually subsided, he began to say in an emotional tone, Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming to celebrate the birth of the thorny sprite with Flower Town and our Baron Liszt. Before the banquet begins, let us first invite today's protagonist, the thorny sprite. As soon as he finished speaking, the butler, Carter, walked in excitedly with a box that was pieced together from jade. He opened the box and the sleeping thorn sprite suddenly woke up. It rubbed its eyes, fluttered its wings and flew up, and landed accurately on Liszt's shoulder. It seemed that it was not fully awake and it yawned in a very human way. Whoa! Chapter 179. Everyone come and witness this beautiful, magical and noble little creature. Gort cheered loudly. The appearance of the thorn sprite was not so shocking. In fact, the little fellow who had not woken up yet, did not pay attention to these nobles at all. She just sat on List's shoulder and dozed off. It had just been born and was full of curiosity about everything. Last night it went to bed very late and seemed a little listless. But this did not prevent the nobles from praising the thorn sprite with loud applause. At the same time, their eyes were cast on List and the sprite on his shoulder with envy, jealousy, appreciation, desire and so on. This applause obviously disturbed the thorn sprite. It flew up at once, made a fierce expression at the applauding crowd, waved its fist and opened its mouth and shouted, "Wow, wow, wow." This obviously did not intimidate anyone, and everyone applauded even more vigorously. The lively sprite was obviously more pleasing to the eye than the dozing sprite. "It's so beautiful. Beautiful little creature. I seem to see it shining with the light of gold coins. The glory of the night favors the Tulip family, and Baron List has inherited the nobility of the Earl. Beautiful, as lovely as those sprites in Tulip Castle." Seeing that her intimidation did not work, and that this group of humans were still chirping, the thorn sprite was furious. It suddenly stretched out its pink little fist, opened its chubby little palm and shouted, "Wow!" But a few flashes of light were seen. It flew towards the crowd. The light quickly stained the clothes of many people, and at a speed visible to the naked eye, green sprouts appeared, and actually began to grow and stretch out branches. "Oh my God! It's the sprite's seeds. The thorn sprite sprinkled seeds on our clothes." The nobles hurriedly stood up and patted the sprouts on their clothes. For a moment the whole banquet scene was in chaos. At this moment List suddenly said, "Stop, little guy." In an instant, the thorn sprite flattened its mouth, reluctantly flew back, and landed on List's shoulder again. The sprouts on the clothes of the nobles also stopped growing. They were slapped and torn off by their hands. It didn't take long for it to be cleaned. Because she was very close to List, Madame Penelope was not sown with seeds. She looked at the elf and said with a smile, "Naughty little fellow, it reminds me of the Count's elves. A few of them are as naughty as it. I like these little elves. They are wilder and more aggressive." Ulvera interjected. Some seeds were scattered on her clothes, but she quickly patted them off and did not tear her clothes. "If I had a little elf, I would be willing to be teased by it every day." A baron of North Valley City shook his collar and said, "The little sprite won't tease its master. Just likes to play. Being naughty means it's full of energy." List waited for everyone to tidy up their clothes and take their seats before apologizing with an insincere smile. "I'm sorry. It's just born, so it's still a little grumpy about strangers disturbing it. I've already restrained it. Everyone, please forget the prank just now and let's continue the banquet." The nobles expressed that they did not mind. It did not matter whether they really did not mind or not. Gort cleared his throat and continued to preside over the celebration. "Everyone has seen our naughty protagonist. There is no doubt that it is a vibrant elf, a treasure bestowed by the glory of the night to Flower Town and Baron List. So, what's its name?" a noble lady suddenly asked. "What's its name?" Gort looked at List. List took over the topic. "It's called Ella. The name represents the prosperity of thorns. The prosperity of thorns begins with it." "Ella?" Everyone savored the name. "Good name, it matches the temperament of the thorn elf very well." "Yes, it's a good name, but it's a bit feminine. But the elf has no gender, so any name can be used." "Ella, is it written like this?" "Oh. Ella, it's a strange serpentine, but it's very interesting. It's a very elegant name." Everyone thought that the name was good. Even if they felt unpleasant in their hearts, they still felt good on the surface. Only Madame Penelope complained, "Ella? It sounds like names like Marie and Melissa. List, can you give it a different name?" Madame Marie, who was sitting next to her, smiled awkwardly and politely. List was also very embarrassed. Melissa was his mother. This old grandmother really didn't give him any face. He could only say, "Grandmother, Ella likes its name." "Wow." The thorn elf, sensing the call of List in his heart, shouted at him. "I'm glad you like it." Madame Penelope did not force it. Perhaps she just wanted to take the opportunity to express some of her own views. The meeting of the thorn elf, Ella, set off the celebration atmosphere. It was almost time for dinner. After asking for instructions, Carter motioned for the servant to start serving wine and pour a glass of red wine or fruit wine for each guest. List picked up the red wine in front of him, looked around and slowly said, "Thank you for coming to Flower Town's elf birth celebration. Everyone knows what the birth of the elf means, especially the elf with the magic potion behind it. My father and brother are already on the battlefield, continuing the glory of the tulip family. The nobles looked at the young, handsome baron. They listened carefully. List's speech level was average and there was no literary talent. He was just releasing a signal. I, List Tulip, as the blood of the tulip family, am sheltered by the family, and hope and must win glory for the family. He paused. His voice increased. Flower Town is just a small town, but with the thorn elf, black tulip, flame mushroom and fast-growing magic thorns, everything is promising. I will also recruit a group of followers to help me govern Flower Town and form a night squad to charge on the battlefield. He thought about it. He added, Flower Town has the ability to win glory from the battlefield. Do you see the flying dust dog at the gate of the castle? It has eaten the bloodline fruit and has evolved into an intermediate world of Warcraft. And it is loyal to me. It will be my most important partner on the battlefield. Intermediate world of Warcraft. This was the first time List announced Dosun's bloodline level to the public. In the blink of an eye, he heard the nobles sitting around the table suck in a breath of cold air. An intermediate world of Warcraft was not as valuable as a sprite. This was a well-known truth. However, if this world of Warcraft existed in the form of a pet, then it was another matter. It was at least equivalent to half a Sky Knight, a weapon on the battlefield. The importance of such an intermediate world of Warcraft was no less than that of a sprite. Chapter 180. Dosun's bloodline brought the atmosphere of the celebration to the highest point. If the thorn sprite and the fast-growing magic thorns behind it represented List's future potential, he could fight for the Viscount title, and the next generation could fight for it. With the help of Intermediate World of Warcraft, the Viscount title was no longer a potential, but a certainty that it would be worn on List's head. He was even more jealous. He was even more envious. His eyes were so hot that they were about to burst into flames. List suddenly felt that this situation of being stared at with strong emotions was still very enjoyable. He couldn't help but think, no wonder everyone is working tirelessly to become an aristocrat. The aristocratic system under the rule of the knight is not only a system, but also a social atmosphere. It was like China in the era of stereotyped writing, where everything was inferior, and only reading was superior. In this world, everything was inferior and only the knight was superior. At this moment, List really felt that he, like the people of this world, had a desire and ambition for aristocratic glory. Of course, blind ambition is not a good thing. He spread the news that he was ready to recruit followers, and the rest was to be brewed. When his speech ended, everyone raised their glasses together, and then the banquet officially began. Delicacies were served by the serving men. Although there were not many expensive ingredients, there were chicken, fish, and eggs. There were also peanuts produced by the peanut processing workshop, all kinds of bread developed by the bakery, fruit wine, rice wine brewed by the winery, and a wide variety of seafood cooked. Under List's guidance, Mrs. Abby developed several special delicacies: green vegetable egg soup, tomato scrambled eggs, tomato egg soup, onion scrambled eggs, bean scrambled eggs, seafood scrambled eggs. Grandma, try this tomato scrambled eggs. Mrs. Abby made this dish. It's very appetizing. List motioned to Madame Penelope to taste it. Looking at the plate, which was no longer a variety of strange pies and sauces, he was very satisfied. People in China paid attention to eating, and so did he. When he first came, he was limited by his inability to cook, and nobles should not enter the kitchen, so he tried to suppress his desire for food. It was not until the seafood craze began and Raynal was encouraged to invent new bread that he gradually enlightened Mrs. Abby. At present, Mrs. Abby had successfully comprehended the two forms of Chinese cuisine, scrambled eggs, and egg soup. Thus, through constant exploration, Mrs. Abby found the right ingredients for scrambled eggs and egg soup. Unable to stop, she made many kinds of scrambled eggs and egg soup. There were even a few times when List's lunch consisted of scrambled eggs and egg soup. Unfortunately, the oil and salt ratio is still lacking. It's not as delicious as the scrambled eggs back home. Eating a mouthful of tomato scrambled eggs, List recalled his life before he crossed over, and a faint sadness emerged in his heart. There was a long way to go to enlighten Mrs. Abby. Scrambled eggs were delicious, but stir-frying was not limited to scrambled eggs. In Chinese cuisine there were stir-frying, deep-frying, stir-frying, pasting, roasting, braising, salt baking, smoking, mud roasting, boiling, stewing, boiling, steaming, shredding, honey sauce, syrup, rinse and so on. Liszt did not know how to cook, so he could not reproduce these cooking skills one by one. However, he still knew the basic principles of stir-frying and boiling. In addition, he was also very familiar with hot pot. This year's winter in Flower Town was inevitable to bring out hot pot. There is also tofu. Tofu must be invented. Mapo tofu is my favorite. Tofu did not exist here, only beans. Most of them were peas. There were also soybeans, but not many. These beans were hard to digest, and if one ate too much, one would fart. It was usually eaten by commoners. Liszt had also eaten boiled beans several times, and they were indeed unpalatable. He wanted to study tofu, but although he knew how to eat tofu, he did not know how to make tofu. He only knew that there were marinated tofu and gypsum to make tofu. Roughly speaking, the beans were ground into soy milk, marinated or gypsum, and then condensed into tofu. As for why it turned into tofu, he did not understand. What was marinated, and what did it have to do with braised pig trotters? He knew about gypsum. Broken hands and feet needed to be put in a cast, but what kind of existence did gypsum exist in nature? Therefore it was difficult to produce tofu. He could only endure it for the time being. Having scrambled eggs to eat was already a kind of progress. There was no need to always think about taking big steps, as it was easy to pull the eggs when taking big steps. Well, it is indeed delicious. It is called tomato scrambled eggs? Madame Penelope was very satisfied with the tomato scrambled eggs. Liszt smiled. If you like, you can send your chef to learn from Mrs. Abbey. The recipe is not confidential to you. Baron Liszt, can we also send a chef to learn? An aristocrat asked. If Mrs. Abbey agrees, of course. Liszt used Mrs. Abbey as a shield. It was impossible for these aristocrats to learn to cook for free. They had to exchange money for the recipe. There was no such thing as a freeloader. The fresh dishes won everyone's unanimous praise. The celebration of the birth of the sprite also had a perfect curtain call. After the luncheon was over and a short rest, the aristocrats also set off. They passed by Dosun's kennel. They couldn't help but look at Trembling Woods a few more times. Heavens, it is so big. Only an intermediate World of Warcraft can have such a body. The Flying Dust Dog is a low-level World of Warcraft, yet it is already the king of Thorn's Ridge. Now that it has become an intermediate World of Warcraft, how powerful would it be? The stone pillars on both sides of the road are its masterpiece? The night is blessed by glory, the rise of the Flower Town is coming. Incredible, I feel like I've gone crazy standing in front of an intermediate World of Warcraft. Dosun had no feelings for this group of people. He didn't even look straight at them. He just lay on the lawn lazily basking in the sun. There was still half a bone left in his mouth. On Dosun Avenue. The carriages were pulled away one by one. Madame Penelope kissed Liszt's forehead. You did a good job, you didn't let your father down. I still remember how much he liked you when he was a child. When he returns from the continent and sees the Flower Town now, he will be pleased. Liszt smiled slightly. I will continue to work hard. He didn't quite understand the father-son relationship between the Count and his predecessor. It was probably related to him not being a father. Olvera also stepped forward and patted Liszt on the shoulder. I hope that one day I will be proud to be Liszt's sister. The girl was no longer Chinibu, but he was a little uncomfortable. I think that day will come. The last to leave were Frank's family. I was going to give you the first batch of black tulips profits today, but then I remembered that today is a festive day, so I will change it to tomorrow. Have Gort or someone else come to the Coral City and check the account book. I have calculated it myself. You can get 210 gold coins from this batch of potions. I will have Advisor Gort follow up on this matter. Frank thought for a moment and asked, So, what do you plan to do with the potions and the thorns? Will you continue to cooperate with Levis? I haven't thought about it yet. Let's talk about it after I have thought it over. Chapter 181. Liszt understood what Frank meant. He wanted to create an opportunity for him and Shirley to get along. He also knew that the way Shirley looked at him was very enthusiastic. If Liszt had been a little more debauched, he might have been able to keep Shirley in Flower Town that night. However, he was a gentleman after all. He just chatted with Shirley about his childhood, mostly Shirley talking and he listening. Because the memory of his predecessor was blurred, many details could not be remembered. After a while, Shirley said goodbye. Brother Liszt, can I still come to Flower Town as a guest? You are very welcome. If Brother List comes to Coral City, you can come to me at any time. I am now helping my mother with some needlework at home and have a lot of free time. Okay. Then I will go back first. My parents are still waiting for me in the carriage. List kept a smile on his face. Be careful on the road. Shirley turned around and walked towards the carriage. When she was about to reach the carriage, she turned her head again, wanting to see if List was looking at her. However, List walked to the side of the kennel and seemed to be playing with the huge flying dust dog. Intermediate World of Warcraft, which was supposed to be terrifying, was really like a puppy circling around him. She suddenly felt a little lost. With the help of the coachman, she got on the carriage. Shirley, how did it go with List? Frank's wife asked as the carriage was on its way. I don't know, Mom. Brother List is very polite. I can't describe it, but it seems like we are meeting for the first time. There is no sense of familiarity. After all, you haven't seen each other for several years. Now you are all grown up. Maybe. Shirley was in a cheerful mood again. Brother List is still as good-looking as when he was a child. It warms people's hearts when he smiles. Then take advantage of the opportunity. Frank's wife said with a smile, with a thorn sprite and intermediate World of Warcraft, List is the most outstanding young man on Coral Island. Well, I will. Shirley nodded graciously. Here, men chasing women and women chasing men were all the same. There was no such thing as the man taking the initiative and the woman taking the initiative. Frank had a smile on his face as he looked at his wife and daughter's relaxed smiles, but there was a hint of pity in his eyes. Having served the Tulip Castle for many years, he knew very well that the Tulip family were not ordinary nobles who knew their place. Lavera was more arrogant than the male nobles, and Levis was determined to marry the daughter of Marquis Roderick. Mary and Lytton, this mother-son duo, had never been lenient when it came to occupying Levis's resources. He used to think that List was the weakest, and the Count was disappointed with him because of this. But now List gradually showed a tough temperament. With the Thorn Sprite and the mid-level magical beast, he immediately began to recruit followers. His ambition was evident. Frank was a little worried. Would such a noble take a fancy to his daughter? He learned from Levis that on Red Crab Island, List even refused the daughter of the Viscount, let alone Shirley, who was just the daughter of a Lord Knight. Fortunately, seeing his daughter so outstanding, he was a little relieved. Maybe Shirley can win over List. He is a young man who has never seen the world and has been holed up in Coral Island. Shirley graduated from Oxhorn College and is smart. Even if List does not succeed, there are still many aristocrats pursuing Shirley on Coral Island. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but relax. We will stay overnight in North Valley City. I have some old friends and I have been looking for an opportunity to catch up with them. All the guests were sent away. Flower Town regained its tranquility, and the castle's servants began to clean the trampled lawn. List loosened Dosen's chain, and it immediately galloped on the horse track, chasing the horses. All the horses turned around and ran as soon as they saw Trembling Woods. Only Black Dragon was not afraid of Trembling Woods at all. It even dared to kick Dosen's hind hooves. Dosen did not dare to toss Black Dragon, because it knew that List forbade it from bullying the horses. Riding Black Dragon, he called out, "Dosen, keep up." Immediately, one man, one horse and one dog along with a few retainer knight, galloped towards the flower farm. The flower farm's ordinary tulip was not expanded and was only barely planted. Most of the wasteland was prepared to be planted with black tulip, striving to cover the area under the influence of tulip worm stock with black tulip. On the wasteland, a simple building came into view. Dosen excitedly rushed towards the building, from which the barking of dogs could be heard. This was a kennel that had just been built. There were 20 female wolfhounds in the kennel. These wolfhounds were of good breed and were tall. They were good helpers in guarding the house. However, when they came to Flower Town, their fate immediately fell into a tragic situation. "Sir Lord, Old Defoe greets you." The serf in charge of the kennel, after saluting, opened the gate of the kennel and let List lead Dosen inside. The kennel was very large. There were rows of kennels and iron cages, and in each iron cage was a large wolfhound. As if they had smelled Dosen, the wolfhounds, who were barking cheerfully, tucked their tails and hid in the depths of the cages. Trembling Woods, on the other hand, was jumping up and down with excitement. Old Defoe, who was very afraid of the majestic Dosen, cautiously opened the door of the first cage. Dosen rushed in impatiently, completing his 10-minute-long attack amidst the female wolfhound's mournful screams. Compared to the female wolfhounds, his size is like a Maltese on a Tibetan Mastiff. But nature, the creator, gives creatures rich creativity and diversity, as well as adaptability. The adaptability of the female wolfhounds is very strong. It can be said that Dosen has skyrocketed in everything except for his mouth. After the painful scene ended, Dosen maintained this posture for a quarter of an hour and was finally able to pull out happily. Leaving the female wolfhound collapsed in the cage, and the dog's face showed a look of despair. Old Defoe, remember to feed it more food and pay attention to whether it is pregnant. Once it is pregnant, go to the castle and inform it immediately, understand? Old Defoe understands. Please rest assured, Sir Lord. Old Defoe has raised dogs for many years, and with his eyes alone, he can accurately tell which dog has a pup. Very good. Leaving the kennel, List sent Dosen to the dog prison and let Dosen and Stupid Woman be intimate. There was no change in Stupid Woman's belly, but there was no doubt that she was pregnant, which was confirmed by Old Defoe and several other professionals. Dosen, who had been released, did not embarrass Stupid Woman again, but played with her for a while. Perhaps because they were of the same species, Dosen had fun with the female wolfhounds and left without any reluctance, but for Stupid Woman he maintained a consistent enthusiasm. List squatted beside Stupid Woman and reached out to touch her black fur. Chapter 182. It seems that Stupid Woman's fierceness has been smoothed out and she can be released to walk around. However, it is still better to be careful. Let her stay in the dog prison and give birth to the flying dust puppies. List looked at the tamed Stupid Woman. Somehow, he thought of the unruly Blessed Curls and vaguely regretted it. Perhaps he had not been soft-hearted and persisted for a while, and Blessed Curls would have surrendered. After all, Blessed Curls and Stupid Woman were just World of Warcraft. Since it was World of Warcraft, there was no dignity to speak of. In a trance. In front of him, a faint smoke emerged and transformed into a serpentine. Mission. Autumn has come, but can winter be far behind? The flower town covered in ice and snow will be isolated. Wheat, as an indispensable staple food, cannot be lacking. Please hoard 10 tons of wheat to pacify the serfs through the winter. Reward, the kindness of the serfs. It was not difficult to hoard 10 tons of wheat. This year the wheat settlement had the wheatworms' help, and it was a bumper harvest. The yield per moo was close to 240 gene, and a total of 500 moo of wheat was harvested 120,000 gene, which was equivalent to 6 tons. As long as you buy 4 more tons, the task will be completed. The Thorns Caravan and the Flower Caravan are already buying new wheat from all over the world. List recovered and looked at the simple task, but he could not figure out why there was a reward like the kindness of the serfs. He even thought disdainfully, do I need the kindness of the serfs? They just need to work hard, build my territory and provide me with luxury. Compared to other lords, he was already a benevolent lord when it came to his attitude towards serfs. Even if other lords beat or even kill the serfs, they had never seen the serfs resist. Therefore in Flower Town, his position as the lord was very stable. The nobles under the knight system did not need any public opinion at all. They only needed the corresponding strength to get everything. Even if this mission reward was useless, it was useless. But for the next task, List still had to complete it. It was a task that was convenient. Even if there was no task, he would still hoard winter supplies. With this thought in mind, he waved his hand lightly and erased the smoke mission. His gaze returned to Stupid Woman. Because the Squire Knight was left outside the dog prison, he directly took out a piece of jerky from the space gem on his chest and fed it to Stupid Woman. When Dosen saw the jerky, he wanted to grab it, regardless of its relationship with Stupid Woman. Go away. List shouted at Dosen and watched as Stupid Woman gobbled up the dried meat. After eating too much jerky, Stupid Woman shook her tail at him. It looked like it was about to mature. Dogs are the friendliest to humans. Compared with Blessed Curls, Dosen and Stupid Woman are very good. In the future, adding a litter of little violent dogs would be perfect. When I go to the battlefield, I will directly release the dogs. With Dosen taking the lead, that scene is too beautiful to behold. It was as if he could already see the rows of rock thorns, how violent the output would be. After walking the dog. When he returned to the castle, Butler Carter had led the servants to tidy up the castle. The gifts sent by the guests were also accounted for one by one and stored in the castle's warehouse. The gifts given by the nobles were usually food or iron, because these two materials were in short supply, so they were the most suitable for gifts. However, the materials obtained by gifts could not make him rich. After all, in the future when other nobles had banquets, List would also need to return the gifts. Master, do you need to check the accounts? No need. List was not a miser who counted how much money and things he had in his hands every day. He just chatted with Carter for a while, then went upstairs to the study, calmed his mind and prepared for today's potion work. He opened the flame mushroom magic potion and drank it. Suddenly, flame-like magic spread out. While the magic was rushing around, he constantly ran his chi so that his body tried to expand, accommodate the magic and then generate his own chi. He described this process as filling a cup with stones. The ordinary Earth Knight's practice was to fill the cup with small stones, but no matter how much it was filled, it would be full of gaps. The elite Earth Knight relied on constant shaking and rubbing against the stones, making the gap a little tighter. The elite Earth Knight, on the other hand, used magic potions instead of sand to fill the cup. He was now repeating this process. It wasn't difficult, but it required a constant supply of energy and patience. Once you take the magic potion, don't stop, at least not intermittently. Otherwise, the chi created by the magic potion will continue to shrink, and eventually fall to the level of an ordinary Earth Knight. But you can't take it too often, you have to find the degree to which the body adapts back and forth. This was the truth that the Count told his sons in his memory. How to take the potion well. The Count himself took the potion for 10 years to break the body's shackles and transform the mid-level chi into high-level chi. This precious experience would be the most core secret of the Tulip family, and no one except the direct bloodline could disclose it. List silently refined the magic of the magic potion to impact his own chi. At the same time, List was comparing his own experience with the secret taught by the Count. He had to find a degree that was suitable for his body. The Count once said, "Everyone takes the magic potion in a different way. It is necessary to judge and master the degree according to your own body." Exceeding the degree would not only waste the potion but also damage the body. If the degree was not reached, not only would it waste time, but it would also increase the body's resistance to the potion. Not every rich elite Earth Knight can rely on the magic potion to become a Sky Knight. Otherwise, the great aristocracy will never fall. A smart mind, a keen sense of touch, and a heart that is not afraid of difficulties are all qualities that a Sky Knight needs to have. These words the predecessor firmly remembered in his heart, showing that there was a tiger hidden in his heart. But what the predecessor lacked most was probably a sense of understanding, so everything benefited the current List. The days of celebration passed and life in Flower Town continued. Cart after cart of wheat transported the newly harvested wheat to the granary not far from the castle. In order to complete the so-called task of stabilizing the serfs, he asked Karl Hammerstein to lead his patrols to publicize this year's harvest. The Lord loved the people, hoarded wheat, and had no worries during the winter. The winter of previous years was a dark memory that the residents of Flower Town could not erase. This year was the most comfortable year for the residents of Flower Town. They were full of hope for the winter, not to mention List's propaganda. No serf showed fear of the winter. "This year will be very good, Maggie, don't worry." Harriet, a peasant woman from Barley Town, said to the thin little girl at the table. The little girl Maggie was a serf bought from the Eagle Kingdom. She had learned Serpentine from old Grandette and was not very proficient, so she was confused. "Mrs. Harriet, what?" "Eat belly." Harriet touched Maggie's little head kindly, pointed to the bread, then pointed to the belly and said with a smile, "Sir Lord is kind. This winter, everyone can eat their fill. We will have a very happy winter, no hunger, no World of Warcraft." She spoke and gestured, successfully making Maggie understand. Chapter 183. After lunch. Maggie was diligently responsible for cleaning up the plates. Her thin body was as busy as a little elf. "Let me do it, Maggie. Go take a nap. You have to train with Lord Rome in the afternoon. Remember to perform well in the training class." Mrs. Harriet liked little Maggie very much. She had no daughter, so she really regarded little Maggie, who was boarding at home, as her own daughter. Because Mrs. Harriet spoke too fast, Maggie could only understand a few snake words such as nap, Lord Rome, training, etc. But she was smart enough to guess what Mrs. Harriet meant. She hurriedly replied in snake text, "Lord Rome's training is easy, Maggie is happy, 3 meals. Flower Town great." She spoke and gestured so that the communication was completed smoothly. Mrs. Harriet smiled and her eyes were misty. Flower Town was not like this in the past. At that time we could only eat 2 meals a day and in winter only 1 meal a day. It was the Lord who brought everything and made Flower Town great. Now we can eat 3 tons of rice a day. In the era of material scarcity, 2 meals a day was the mainstream for civilians, and 3 meals was the standard for aristocrats. When Maggie was in the Eagle Kingdom, she lived in the countryside and ate 2 meals a day with her family. After coming to Flower Town, it was already a great happiness to be able to eat 3 meals a day. She was still young and had not been assigned to farm work. What she needed to do every day was training classes and needlework classes. Training classes taught some punches and kicks to build up strength, while needlework classes invited serfs, dyers and spinners to teach printing and weaving skills. Maggie learned very seriously. This was because she knew that skills were very precious. In her hometown, learning a skill would cost a lot of money before someone would be willing to teach it. Compared with the illusory prospect of building up strength and cultivating chi, she was more willing to become a spinner. When she finished her needlework class and returned to Mrs. Harriet's house, dinner was just about to start. But compared to the past, the atmosphere at home seemed a little serious. Harriet's husband sat on the bench with a dignified expression. Mrs. Harriet's son and daughter-in-law, who had separated from the family, also rushed over. It wasn't until the bread and seafood were served that Maggie realized what day it was from Harriet's daughter-in-law's gestures. Harriet's daughter's Memorial Day. Mr. and Mrs. Harriet had had a little daughter, but she had fallen ill in the winter, and had not had enough to eat and had died 3 years ago. She was only a little older than Maggie when she died. This was also the reason why Harriet and her husband were willing to take Maggie in. The next day, Harriet and her husband even invited Monsieur Grandet of the town to their house. Through Grandet, he communicated with Maggie. Maggie, Mrs. Harriet wants to form a contract with you as mother and daughter. Ah! Maggie was caught off guard and did not know how to get back. Old Grandet said gently, the past is the past, there is no need to think too much about it. Now that you have come to the Flower Town, your family is dead. Why don't you form a contract with Mrs. Harriet? It will be convenient to look after her, and they can help you redeem your serf contract and restore your status as a freeman. This was great news. Harriet and her family ran the town's general store, and were well off, and belonged to the well-to-do lot. If she could form a contract with them, Maggie knew that she would have a good future. But she didn't know why, but she was vaguely resistant. Monsieur Grandet, I have relatives? I have a sister. Old Grandet frowned. He checked Maggie's identity information and did not find any relatives among the serfs. According to Maggie's own narrative, her parents were killed by mercenaries. You have a sister? Where is she? Why didn't you say it before? My sister left home several years ago. She said that when she learned magic she would come back to me. My sister will come back to me. Learn magic? Was she chosen by a certain Mr. Truth and became a magic apprentice? This thought flashed by, but old Grandet did not care. Even if Maggie's sister became a mage, it was almost impossible for her to come to the Coral Island to find her sister. Besides, maybe she died in an explosion. In the mage industry, the probability of an explosion is quite high. He just thought that Maggie was a little shy and embarrassed, so he asked her to think about it for a few days. Harriet and her husband did not mention it again and continued to maintain the previous atmosphere. But Maggie could not calm down for a long time. At the same time, thousands of miles away in the Eagle Kingdom, the flames of war continued. The Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom invaded, and the Eagle Kingdom was forced to resist. The Dragon Knight wandered around to support the battlefield. On the other side, in the hinterland of the Eagle Kingdom, the army of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, like locusts passing through, desperately searched the coastline and border castles, plundering all kinds of wealth and minerals. Amidst the chaos of war, a warship flying the flag of the Red Tulip family slowly approached the port. The port lighthouse also hung a red tulip flag. Needless to say, this was naturally the bridgehead occupied by the Tulip family along the coastline of the Eagle Kingdom. There were already servants of the Tulip family, joining the servants of the fleet to sort out the goods, which were all specialties of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. While fighting and robbing at the same time, trading and smuggling both did not delay. The entire harbor was bustling with people loading, unloading and transporting cargo, running around non-stop. Is this the ship of the Tulip family? In a shabby tavern on the dock, a female mercenary with a face scarf, holding a glass of wine, looked out of the window and asked. She was talking about the wind. Opposite her was a shifty-eyed guy, who greedily glanced at the mercenary's bulging chest, and answered wretchedly, of course, this dock and most of the surrounding castles have been occupied by the wave-sword Saint Lee William. The Red Tulip has become a nightmare for many nobles. Lee William's fleet has been engaged in slave trafficking? Hey, the Sapphire people are a group of serf traffickers. It would be strange if they didn't sell slaves. When will the fleet return? It depends on how fast you mercenaries can catch serfs. If you're fast, maybe you can sell a batch of serfs this month. This is for you. The mercenary flicked her finger in the air, and a shiny silver coin flew into the air and then fell on the table. She got up and left without looking back. The shifty-eyed guy reached out and pressed the silver coin, licked his lips, greedily picked it up, held it in the palm of his hand and smiled brightly. Sir Mercenary, if you need any more information, just come to the Old Fort Tavern to find me. Hey, why did she suddenly disappear? When he raised his head, the mercenary was no longer in the tavern. Chapter 184. I don't know how my father and brother are doing in the Eagle Kingdom, and how much profit they got this year. After practicing Fiery Dragon Drill and Fire Surge Fluctuations, List took the bow and arrows and began to practice multiple arrows. After starting his life of taking potions as an elite Earth Knight, he had been a little excited these days. He wished he could go to the battlefield and charge a few times to show his powerful strength. It was like a person suddenly making a fortune. Of course, his reason would tell him to keep a low profile, but his feelings would certainly want to show off. Wait for me to ponder the Chi secret book. I must fight against Marcus another day. With the red blood sword and black dragon, even if I lack experience and my Chi operation skills are not as good as Marcus, I can still win. He was full of confidence even if his strength was not enough. Of course, the fight must be carried out in private. In case List lost, as long as the person involved did not mention it, it would naturally not affect his image. Thinking of this, he became more immersed in his practice. He put his hand on the bowstring and two sharp arrows flew out side by side. The Chi guided the arrows to collide quickly in the air, slightly changing their flight trajectory and shooting straight at two targets that were 10 meters away. Bang bang. Two crisp sounds. List looked up. The arrows that were 100 meters away had completely pierced into the center of the thick target. One arrow for one target, extremely accurate. His eyesight had been greatly improved after using magic eyes for a long time. With multiple arrows, he could easily hit where he pointed. Not to mention shooting a target 100 steps away, even shooting a target 1,000 steps away was not difficult. However, because the target was too far away, the Chi attached to the arrow would dissipate in mid-air, and he could only rely on the kinetic energy of the arrow itself to fly. The attack power and trajectory changes would be greatly reduced. Many Earth Knights practice multiple arrows, but there are not many talented archers. Marcus is one, but I am even more talented. In Flower Town, List liked to compare with Marcus to estimate his strength. With this double arrow alone, my realm is definitely higher than Marcus. Sweating profusely, he continued to practice multiple arrows. He had yet to master the ultimate profound multiple phantom arrow, but he had already mastered the most basic double arrow. It was spinning. From afar came the sound of a caravan of carriages. The team transporting the newly purchased wheat had already passed the castle and was heading straight for the granary. Officials had already led a large number of serfs who were waiting for work to begin transporting wheat and piling it up in the granary. Everyone had a smile on their faces. Although the food hoarded in the castle was the Sir Lord's personal storage, the serfs could naturally benefit from the food in the castle. At the very least, the Sir Lord would no longer collect the serfs' winter food. In the past, the Flower Town's tax knight was like a vampire at the end of autumn, itching to collect all the serfs' food. The caravan moved all the wheat into the warehouse. It should be 100 tons of wheat, right? List had just finished practicing multiple arrows. When he saw the merchant group return, he had a thought and summoned a smoke quest on his horse. Complete the task and reward the kindness of the serf Maggie. The kindness of Serf Maggie? Listening to the name, it was a female serf. List was confused about this and directly said to the valet Thomas behind him, "You go and inquire if there is a serf named Maggie. Don't make a big fuss, just inquire about her situation." Thomas responded and left. List continued to guess the content of the quest reward as he walked towards the castle. What does the kindness of a serf mean? Is there a problem with this serf, or is there any talent for me to discover? The name is female, it is a female serf, or... He suddenly came up with an idea. For a moment, it was hard to contain his excitement. Could it be that the smoke quest saw that I was very attentive to the secretary these days, so it told me that there is a beautiful female serf in Flower Town to be my secretary? Such an idea felt quite unreliable. But what if it was true? Fortunately, he was still rational. He calmed himself down a little and saw the new mission. Quest. The sailors have been trained for a long time, the captain is ambitious, and the calm pearl is about to be produced. The Flower Town's only ship, the Flower, ushered in a long voyage. The ambitious goal of the Sea of Stars, please personally complete the first voyage of the flower. Reward, dragon horses. The quest reward was not surprising. Black Horse Island was judged to be inhabited by dragon horses. However, the content of the mission made List a little unhappy. They actually want me to complete the first voyage personally? Costo and his group of sailors, even with the help of the Calm Pearl, are in danger at sea. It is too irresponsible to let me take the risk of the smoke quest. His original intention was to let Marcus and the others go to Black Horse Island to explore. After confirming that it was safe to sail and land safely on the island, he would set off. After thinking about it, he was relieved. In fact, I don't have to go. My subordinates will find the dragon horses and receive the reward in advance. The quest will also change, but I still have to go and prepare before going to sea. Reducing the risk factor should not be a problem. The group of refugees on Little Kerchief Island, under the command of Costo, could drift to Coral Island thousands of miles away. Coral Island and Black Horse Island are only separated by the width of the Taiwan Strait, and with a group of trained sailors, it should not be difficult to navigate. Now that it has been decided. List no longer hesitated and quickly found Costo. Captain Costo, I am going to accompany you to Black Horse Island. During this time, you and my retainer knight should pay attention to cooperation. Please rest assured, sir, Costo will definitely protect the safety of the Lord. Expressing his attitude, Costo asked, Sir, I don't know when the Calm Pearl will be made. No more than 3 days at the latest. Then please let your retainer knight come to the flowers to train in the next 3 days to ensure that they can protect the safety of the Lord at the first moment when they are in danger. Yes. List suddenly thought, I intend to let Dosen go to sea with me. What do you think? Costo thought carefully and said, Dosen is a land World of Warcraft. He will definitely be seasick for the first time. Even if he trains continuously for 3 days, he may not be able to overcome seasickness. Let's see if Dosen will get seasick. He had never thought of sailing to Black Horse Island on his own, let alone with Dosen. But Dosen will definitely follow him to the battlefield in the future, and he is the most suitable bodyguard. Therefore, sailing together in the future is essential, and it is reasonable to train in advance to prevent seasickness. It is not indecisive, so the next day, Dosen was led to the flowers by List. Dosen, who got on the ship, was obviously too curious and jumped on the deck. Every time he jumped, he could feel the flowers trembling on the sea. A behemoth weighing more than a ton was so powerful. However, Dosen was afraid of the water and did not dare to approach the side of the ship. List dragged it and approached the side of the ship. It did not move, and its eyes did not dare to look down at the sea from the side of the ship. Especially when the flowers left the simple dock formed by several pieces of wood tied together. Riding the wind and waves on the sea, Dosen's originally active temperament suddenly withered, and it lay on the deck sullenly, not daring to move. Chapter 185. This chapter is a reward for the leader Q Blockhead, 1 chapter for the time being and 10 chapters in the future. Swaying left and right, swaying 3 times with 1 step. This was a portrayal of Dosen after getting off the ship. His eyes were cloudy and he almost vomited. Even if it's intermediate World of Warcraft, I will still get seasick and I will get very seasick. List was helpless about this. After all, World of Warcraft lived on land. The sailing ship swayed, and even he who had just crossed over fainted once when he first went out to sea. However, World of Warcraft's powerful resilience was soon reflected. By the time he took the dizzy Dosen and slowly returned to the castle, Dosen's seasickness symptoms had significantly subsided. His legs were no longer swaying, his vision was no longer blurred, and his voice was louder. Except for his spirit, everything else had recovered. Whether he can overcome seasickness or not, I will take Dosen with me when I go out the day after tomorrow. The flower's speed was 5 knots, and it would take 14 hours to reach Black Horse Island, and it would take at least an hour or 2 to find a place to dock. So after the first voyage, they must camp on Black Horse Island. Without Dosen, List has no sense of security. In case there is intermediate World of Warcraft on Black Horse Island, the recovered Dosen can at least resist 1 or 2. In addition, he and Marcus, 2 elite Earth Knights, will assist from the side. Dosen has become his confidence. Walking on the soon-to-be-completed Dosen Avenue. Behind him came the sound of hooves. It was Thomas, who inquired about the serf Maggie, who returned with a thick bast paper to record her identity. Master, I have inquired about Maggie's identity. She is a new Eagle Kingdom serf who joined Flower Town. She has no relatives and no surname. She is currently boarding with the grocery store owner. List took the thick bast paper and keenly grasped the key. Boarding? Is she a child? Yes, sir, Maggie is just 9 years old this year. On the thick bast paper, it was also clearly written, Maggie, 9 years old, no relatives among serfs, lodged in the grocery store owner's home, currently receiving training in the girls' group, and participating in the needlework class organized by the administrative office. After reading the records, he casually passed the thick bast paper to Thomas. Return it to the administrative office. He didn't say anything more. His mood was as listless as trembling woods. He thought that the smoke mission was very considerate and prepared to reward him with a beautiful female secretary. He even thought about what kind of name to recruit the secretary. He didn't expect that it was just a 9-year-old girl. What is the meaning of this? You want me to raise it? List tied Dosen into the kennel and walked into the castle alone. He went straight to the study. The study was his place to think. The smoke mission won't be that simple. After all, it's a product of the smoke dragon and it involves fate. There must be something else about Maggie. The invisible dragon chain mission, the thorns worm chain mission, many seemingly messy missions and rewards often had some kind of connection. Therefore, he naturally wouldn't think that this 9-year-old serf, Maggie, was a random reward from the smoke mission. There is too little information. Continue to pay attention to Maggie. By the way, Mrs. Morrison complained to me that the workload of the maids in the castle is too heavy, especially with banquets every day, and that more maids need to be recruited. List's thoughts flashed. Maybe I can recruit Maggie as a maid and train her from a young age? No matter what involvement she has, there will always be a day when it will be revealed. Even if there is no involvement, she can be trained as a secretary candidate. List shook the bell. He called Carter and Mawson over. Sir, what can I do for you? Mrs. Morrison told me that there are not enough female servants in the castle. Are there enough male servants? Carter and Mawson looked at each other and said, the daily life of the castle can barely be maintained by the servants, but for a grand festival like the birth of the sprites, there is a shortage of manpower. And sir, the castle has no name now. We all know that you will give it a name sooner or later. Mrs. Morrison said, a castle with a name needs a large number of servants to maintain, especially serious and skilled servants. It is difficult for us to recruit them in a short period of time. It is best to train them ourselves. Yes, we should train a group of servants ourselves. Carter smiled, his face full of gratification. Sir, you need more people to serve you. The glory belongs to you. List lived alone in the castle. At present, there were 15 servants serving him, and the 2 stewards were still complaining about the lack of manpower. In the past, List couldn't imagine what kind of luxurious life it would be to have 15 people taking care of one. Now, however, he agreed with the 2 stewards. It is true that we should train our own group of servants. Now Flower Town is not short of food and clothing, and the castle is not short of gold coins and income. So the training of servants will be left to Mr. Carter and Mrs. Morrison. The first batch tentatively set 20 internship places. Subsequently, he said euphemistically, I ran into a little girl named Maggie. She is very pitiful and polite. If she wants, Mrs. Morrison, give her an internship place. As you wish, sir. Dinner every day. List told everyone that he was going to go with the flower to sea. The flower will probably stay on Black Horse Island for a few days to look for the dragon horses. Sir, I hope to go with you to Black Horse Island. Gort immediately expressed his loyalty. List directly refused. This is just to explore the way. When it is confirmed that Black Horse Island is going to be developed, I will send you there to arrange things for me if Consultant Gort doesn't want to go. I am at your service at any time. Has Flower Town been developing smoothly these 2 days? Very smoothly. It is expected that before the first winter snow comes, Flower Town will finish all the construction of roads and houses. This winter, I believe the serfs will have a comfortable winter. Have you prepared winter clothes and blankets? The administrative office is not ready, but the caravans coming and going to Flower Town have begun to sell quilts and cotton-padded clothes. I went to the market to check. A cotton-padded coat sells for 12 copper coins. As long as the serfs are not lazy, they can afford it. A quilt costs 25 copper coins and the serf family should be able to buy 2. He finished and added, you don't have to worry that these serfs will freeze to death. They have thick skin and thick flesh. As long as you give them something to eat, they won't freeze to death even if they are thrown into a snow pit. But List didn't think so. Consultant Gort, do you know how much it costs me to buy a serf? Well, 20 silver coins. Since you know it's 20 silver coins, do you now see them as 20 silver coins? Are they worth a few dozen copper coins or 20 silver coins? List asked in a bad tone. He didn't care if Gort looked down on the serfs or not. Everyone was equal, it was a lie to deceive children. But he must pay attention to the value of the serfs and the value they can create, so he directly reprimanded, "This winter, for every serf that freezes to death, 20 silver coins will be deducted from your salary." Chapter 186. This chapter is, "You can only read with your heart if you spend money." Wheat settlement. Glanny's workshop. Glanny, who hadn't taken a bath for 5 days, held a black sphere the size of a basketball with his dyed hands. His eyes were bloodshot, but his gaze was hot as if it could burn people. Success. I, Glanny, have successfully made a magic equipment more precious than gemstone equipment. Glanny raised the calm pearl high, as if a scientist had created Frankenstein. Its magic power covers a range of 182 meters. Within this range, all the wind is silenced by the water attribute magic. It should be called the Eye of the Storm, no, the Lord of the Storm. Then the next moment, List, who was waiting impatiently, snatched the calm pearl. "Mr. Glanny, thank you very much for completing the calm pearl for me. I will personally experiment with its effects. You can take a good bath and sleep, and when you wake up, I will hold a dinner party for you in the castle." After that, he asked Thomas to hand over a handkerchief and carefully wiped the greasy calm pearl. Glanny looked at the calm pearl reluctantly, his tone full of regret. "It is one step away from being comparable to the little elven soldier. If it weren't for your reluctance to part with the wind peregrine falcon, I would have made it into the top magic equipment. It's a pity that you are too short-sighted." List really wanted to punch him and shut him up. But he still told Charlie with a very noble temperament, "Take care of your teacher, and remember to remind him to attend the banquet tonight." "Understood, Lord Baron." Elk's son had finished making the magic potion and returned to Coral City. The candidate for the calm pearl experiment fell on Marcus, who had wind attribute chi. "Are you ready?" "Ready." "Then let's begin, Teacher Marcus." "Yes, my lord." The coverage of the sea-calming divine pearl could not stop Marcus from releasing his chi. However, after he used his chi move, the power rapidly declined, and the wind attribute chi was dispersed less than a meter away from his body. When Marcus used multiple arrows, the chi attached to the arrows dissipated even faster. Very troublesome magic equipment. Within the range of the calm pearl, I feel that I can only use 10% of my strength at most. The suppression effect is very strong, Marcus said with a frown. He didn't like this feeling. List smiled and analyzed, "If you get close, it won't hinder you from exerting your strength. It can only weaken the magic and aura of long-range wind attribute. Half of my strength is in multiple arrows. It's the same as crippling my multiple arrows." Karl Hammerstein, who participated in the experiment, asked curiously, "Your Excellency, Mr. Marcus, why can the water-attributed sea-calming pearl silence the wind-attributed mana? I've always felt that water magic power should restrain fire magic power. The control of magic is a complicated field of magic." List was in a good mood and explained to Karl. In fact, it was all Glanny's explanation, and he didn't really understand it himself, but it didn't prevent him from relaying the knowledge with his good memory. In reality, water can extinguish fire, and water magic power can extinguish fire magic power. All magic power originates from the magic power of chaos, and it just shows various different attributes. As long as the magic structure is pried open, the restraining effect can be achieved. Then Karl's eyes were full of confusion, but on the surface, he nodded as if he understood. "I see." Then the experiment continued. After 3 hours of exploration, List had completely figured out the silence attribute of the sea-calming pearl. The wind within a range of 182 meters, including the wind-attributed mana, was directly silenced. But the further the distance, the greater the attenuation, and at the edge of the range the effect of the silence was much weaker. Using Marcus as a reference, his chi could be 3 meters away from his body at the edge, but not even half a meter away from the center. Whether he used the ultimate meaning or an ordinary move, he would be silenced by the sea-calming pearl. There were magic runes on the surface of the black pearl. As long as the chi was used to touch the magic runes, it could produce a confinement effect, confining the silence effect of the sea-calming pearl. When used, the magic runes were touched again, and the confinement effect was lifted. When the sea-calming pearl was placed in a pond near the castle, the water, which had been wrinkled under the breeze, quickly calmed down and no waves could be seen. It was just that Karl stirred hard with his long sword, causing the surface of the pond to fluctuate again. It can't silence the movement of the water, so when there is a storm, sailing will still be dangerous. Marcus analyzed. List nodded. Yes, but if the impact of the storm is eliminated, we can concentrate on dealing with the waves and reduce the danger of the ship capsizing. All in all, he was satisfied with the effect of the sea calming pearl. Today's time has been missed. Tomorrow morning, we will set off for Black Horse Island with the sea calming pearl. Early the next morning, Glanny Truth, with his apprentice Charlie, met up with the flower caravan early in the morning, ready to leave Flower Town. I hope we will have the opportunity to work together again, Mr. Glanny. List solemnly sent Glanny to the mainland. He did not like Glanny's attitude, but he appreciated the other's knowledge. He did tell him a lot about magic without concealing anything. I also hope to work together again, Baron List. Glanny's hair was washed, his clothes were washed, and he regained his mage temperament. He put on his hood to hide the expression on his face. Then, I hope that the next time we meet, you have already obtained the noble title you want. Tick-tock. The carriage started. The caravan left. The voyage was about to begin. Butler Carter exclaimed, Thomas, remember to take care of the master's daily life, don't slack off. Thomas always behaved humbly in front of List. Mr. Carter, please rest assured that I will do my job with all my heart. Carter turned to List and bowed deeply. Master, I hope you will return safely. I will, Mr. Carter. Under the watchful eyes of the servants, List held Dosen's hand and set off with Marcus, Thomas, and the retainer knight to the dock. The sky was not yet bright, but a red line appeared on the white skyline. When they arrived at the dock, they found that Gort, Blair, and the others had been waiting there for a long time. Costo, with the sailors, was busy making the final preparations for the voyage. There was no unnecessary talk. List boarded the Flower with the retainer knight. Costo asked for instructions and arranged the sailors to take their positions. A moment later, the red tulip flag representing the Tulip family was hung. The Flower, waved by Gort and other officials, slowly left the dock by oars. It sailed towards the depths of the Azure Sea. When the ship had entered the deep waters, Captain Costo immediately shouted, "Raise the sails!" Crash. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.